What's going on, everybody? Welcome to the Fresh Podcast, where we bring everything fresh in entertainment. I am your host, Drew Brumfield, and today I am joined with every member of the Fresh crew. We got Seth. Seth, how you doing?
I'm doing good.
All right. And we also got Randy. Randy, how are you doing?
Dude, I am so glad that it's the end of the year, but I'm doing great.
We are glad. We are finally into our holiday season. And with that, bringing some holiday cheer, we got Robert. Robert, how are you doing?
Oh, right, that's my cue. Go ahead,
Nice.
We prepared this, man. We practiced this.
You told me.
Yeah.
You told me to do it.
I know, it was great. I loved it. I love it so much. All right, but yes, as Robert put so elegantly, we are here talking about the Taco Bell Dong song. No, we are here talking about Batman, specifically the two highest rated and highest regarded Batman films, 2008, Christopher Nolan's The Dark Knight, and then 2002, Matt Reeves' The Batman.
In 2022?
Oh, 2022. Skip to 2 there. Kind of an important
Yeah,
number. Kind of the
Yeah, I
important
figured
one.
we could. Yeah, I thought we could. Yeah, let that go since I think most people would know which one you're talking about.
Call me out on my bullshit. I need to be kept in check. But yes, these are two of the highest rated and kind of most beloved Batman movies. And they have, honestly, they have some similarities, but honestly, they're very different in like the way they tell their stories, how they treat their main character, their villains, a lot of stuff. But this is the movie. One of these movies is what you think of when you think the Batman, and we are here to discuss which one is better, worse, the same in the way, and compare and contrast. So, without further ado. I think the best way to start this is kind of with the big question on everyone's mind is comparing the Dark Knight himself. So, yeah, I'll just start right into it of what are your guys' thoughts on the character, the Batman? And I'm going to start off with the man who's originally pitched this podcast, Seth. What are your thought comparison on the main character versus Dark Knight versus the Batman? How are they different? How are they similar? How do these Batman compare?
I think whenever you're looking at it this way, it's kind of hard to compare them just because I think both films are tackling Batman in very different ways. I think The Dark Knight tries to approach Batman as like a concept more so. There's a lot of like dealing with his story about what is the point of Batman existing in the first place in The Dark Knight, and because like Batman in that universe, Batman was created in response to the corruption of power. As basically be like, well, Gotham's PD is not really doing its job. Can Batman step in and do its job? But then whenever you have like Harvey coming in and like potentially him being like, as they put it, the White Knight for Gotham, what is the point of having the Dark Knight anymore? So I think as a result, Christian Bale and his depiction of Batman becomes more about the idea of it rather than the actual character. Whereas I think the Batman, Robert Pattinson's version, is more focused on the character itself. It is more focused on Bruce's psyche and his relationship with Batman. It still deals with some of those same questions about like, what is the role of the Batman? But I think it kind of takes a little bit of a different turn than just a moralistic standpoint about like what is like the stance of Batman, because it's still dealing with like corruption. But I think it's also dealing more with like, what does Bruce want Batman to be? What does he feel like Batman needs to be for Gotham?
Yeah, I definitely also feel that, and this gets into story a little bit, but like what each Batman does is also very different, because what you're talking about, one being the symbol, we see Christian Bale's Batman like he's the one going out crime fighting, punching a lot more and doing that, versus not Matt Reeves, he's the director. With Robert Pattinson's Batman, I kind of noticed him. There aren't actually too many fight scenes with his cat. He's Batman is more of a detective. He's going around questioning people, interrogating them, talking about stuff, still kind of being young and figuring it out, like what's going on, and really showing like the detective side of Batman.
And intimidation too.
Yeah.
I think Pattinson, and it definitely plays into the story of it, is a lot more. He literally doesn't call himself Batman in the movie. He calls himself Vengeance. It's a lot more like a darker tone. I think about the opening of the film and how it's that really long sequence where you have Robert Pattinson narrating over it.
Randy,
and then,
this is Randy's favorite part of the movie. Randy, would you like to do the opening?
It's Thursday, October 31st. The streets are still crowded despite the rain. I just find it very appropriate because we ended up rewatching it on
Halloween,
Thursday, October 31st,
but then
on Halloween.
My favorite line is immediately after crime has doubled since I've gotten here. It's like, doubled? What are you doing? Anyway, sorry, Seth. I don't want to pull you off, but that's Randy. That's like one of his favorite quotes from the movie, so I want to give him a chance to say it.
I mean, I get it, and it's like, no, I absolutely get that, and I mean, it's an iconic line, and it's an iconic scene, and I think that scene, its use of what's great about it is how it builds up like the tension and fear. Is of course it's the music and the narration, but I love just the empty spaces and the dark hallways, just making sure that we always talk about how. With like films or TV shows or something, we talk about how a character's presence can be felt even when they're on screen. It's so much here using those dark spaces. It feels more akin to methods used in horror rather than used in like a comic book film, which is so awesome.
It's what you
I think it's
scary. Yeah.
What I love about that is like it feels such a It almost makes it feel quaint when you look back at like Batman Begins and like how they had to do horror is they basically had to like have people exposed to the fear toxin, and when they would look at Batman they would see like a CGI monster. Demon, I don't know if people from Batman Begins. And I love how by the time we get to this in The Dark Knight, they basically just ditch all that. They're like, we're not really concerned with that. So I think that's like the strength of the Batman is that it approaches Batman. Obviously, both are at very different points in their lives, but I think that doesn't really matter for the sake of comparison. I think what really matters is what is each film trying to say about Batman.
And I do. Sorry. I just before we left that opening, I do want to point out I joke about it a lot. But I actually really like that opening monologue where he talks about how, like, it is kind of I joke about it a lot. It's like, oh, what are you really doing? But the fact that crime has doubled, I like that line and I like that moment because we actually do see I feel like that establishes really well that this is a Batman that's early on. He's still kind of figuring it out. He doesn't actually know how to stop crime. And that's not even, it's not even really his main goal is to, like, lower the crime rate at this point in his life. He's just like you mentioned, just straight vengeance. He just wants to hit people, and he just wants to like fight. And he's angsty and angry. And I think that opening monologue does such a great job of showing you who this character is and what it is. Like we don't need to see his parents get gunned down in an alleyway. It's one of my favorite things about the Batman is we don't actually see it again. We get it. And so I just
it still talks about Thomas and Martha Wayne's death, but we don't have to see it to know like yes, this is what happens in the mythos. This is that moment is still relevant to the story, but in a much different way than what you normally see. It's not to build Batman up, it's to kind of develop Thomas and Martha more. Which is kind of an interesting take on it.
And that moment, just that opening monologue does such a good job of telling you like this is this kind of Batman and you get it. Like we don't actually spend that much time trying to learn about who he was in his past or how he got there. That it's just that opening scene and through his other interactions that you don't need a prequel movie. And I'm not saying that like Dark Knight Rises is a bad film, the prequel to Dark Knight, but with the Batman, you don't need that in the slightest because like we've done this before. You know who it is, and despite this Batman having a different take, you understand like this is where he comes from. This is his methods of doing stuff, and this is the tone of this Batman and this world. And I think that opening monologue does such a great job of establishing who he is and like what kind of character this is.
Yeah, I also think it establishes very different tones with the films.
Yes.
And I don't want to like make this just the Batman glazing fest. I do really like the Batman, but I also want to point out that like the very different approaches is I think the Dark Knight is much more a film. It is it is trying to be a more realistic take of like what Batman is. Now, granted, there are jumps there where it's like a lot of the tech he is using, while at the time, yes, it was possible. Like we did have exoskeletons, we do have bikes, we do have like the tumblers and stuff like that, or have access to it. But like, is it actually like that really available or that functional? That's really up for debate. But they wanted to make it feel as like, I feel like the approach was, let's try to take the concept of Batman and try to make it as realistic as we could get with a movie. Whereas with like, and I mean, that's even down to the fact that a lot of the tactics that they use, which I think is fun, is actually using actual military tactics. Like whenever in The Dark Knight, when Bruce goes to Shanghai to kidnap the bookie, that's the bookie. They specifically say like, well, back in the 70s, the CIA would, and this is real, they would use these Fulton balloons where they would like fly them up, and that's how they would quickly extract their agents. Is that they would Fulton up these balloons, they would fly planes over, hook them, and grab them and pull them up. And like that's the tactic. Is they use that tactic here in the Dark Knight. Whereas in the Batman, I think because of just the way the film is shot and how much of the like just the dialogue and the monologue is used at the beginning of this film as well, it's much more trying to be like a comic book, which is funny because it's like I feel like the Batman is still doing a lot of its own takes of Batman, like the suit, the Batmobile, a lot of the different characters, even parts of Gotham itself. But in a weird way, it does feel like it is a direct adaptation of some sort of comic book of Batman. But in actuality, it's not. But it manages to capture that feel that it is.
It's interesting.
It feels so much more comic booky.
Yeah. It's interesting that you say that, because for me, when I watch these two films, the Batman is the one that feels more grounded and more set in realism. To me, The Dark Knight is the one that feels more like a comic book. Because in The Dark Knight, like you said, yes, they're using real military tactics, but a lot of it's like he's got like sonar tech and he's hacked into every phone that can like see through the world, and like the way characters are very like comic booky and animated. Not a bad thing in the slightest. That's not a complaint. But The Dark Knight is the one that feels more like this feels like a true crime show or something, where it's like, or like a like a detective film, like a whodunit. And with really the only thing like weird or supernatural is the main character, the Batman himself, is the only one that like he's the only one that's dressing up in a costume. He's the only one that's like being weird here.
Yeah, I think I think the things are just shown so plainly though in The Dark Knight, where and granted that's a style of Nolan as well. Is I feel like he tries to show things as they are, as he sees them. Whereas with the Batman, I feel like the way things are shot is much more like comic booky and more like colored focus. I think also in terms of realism, like for example, so much of it is about breaking down like the crime, like in The Dark Knight, so much of it is about them building up this case against like these crime families, doing this joint effort with GPD and the oh God, what is Gordon? I can't remember the name of Gordon's specific unit. It's like the major crimes unit in MCU.
Yeah.
I think that's what it's called. I really don't remember it. But like, I feel like so much of it is, and even though there's a lot of unrealistic parts where, yes, in The Dark Knight, one thing that's like, it's such a movie thing where like, Dent is interrogating one of I believe Falcone's men, and then he pulls a gun on him in the middle of court. He disarms and takes him out. He's like, hold on, I still want him for questioning. Just like, that's such a fun, that's such a movie moment. But the fact that the Dark Knight even tries to take the time to talk about like the different levels of justice, where it's not just police doing these operations and arresting, but also like the courtroom drama, and then also like the different levels of like, well, how do we need to approach this operation to make sure we get the pin on all these guys where we need this and that? And it's like, well, I don't want your men working this. Whereas like the Batman is much more a straightforward, yeah, like you said, it's like a straightforward detective film where it's something more like Silence of the Lambs, where it's just kind of like, here's the clue, you got to follow the clue, and this is where it's going to take you to. And so, yeah, like, I don't know. I feel like and plus also like the Batman does have its fair share of like more sci-fi-ish technology, which granted, it's very possible that we might have this stuff, or we might be developing like the fact that Batman has pretty much his own heads-up display with the contact lenses that he uses. Feels very sci-fi-ish as well. I feel like just as sci-fi-ish as Sonar Vision. But I think what I mean by like realism is, and I don't want to get into it too much because I know we'll be talking about Gotham in a little bit, but like they go to such lengths to give style and sense to Gotham feeling like its own thing in the Batman. Whereas whenever I watch The Dark Knight, I just see Chicago.
Yeah, it's New York or Chicago. Yeah, it's big city.
Well, it's Chicago because the big river that runs through it is the river that runs through Chicago. Oh, okay. I've been to Chicago, so like, I trust me. I'm not saying I'm an expert on it, but I'm like, it's hard not to see the movie. It's just like this is just Chicago. It helps that also that's where it was filmed too.
Yeah, which like to be fair, like Gotham before Batman was just Gotham City was a nickname for New York. So like it makes sense that they would just pick a big city to use at it, but. We'll get into more of that, unless you guys want to go into it now. But yeah, I know what you mean of like the Batman's Gotham feels like a completely different world. And I do want to talk real quick, and I'll... Oh, you go ahead, Robert.
It was like they clearly take place at like different times, because tech back in like Dark Knight, it seems a lot more like futuristic and kind of comic booky because it was kind of a stretch for the tech at the time. But then you like look and see like people are using like smartphones and stuff in the Batman, so like the technology may not feel as like kind of comic-y because we as a society we have a lot more advanced technology in the time the movie's taking place in.
Yeah, I see that. I do want to.
I feel both films are just like I feel both films are generally modern. 2008, you see, I love how the best way you can tell when a film is made is what kind of phones. You're right. Batman, everybody's on smartphones. In The Dark Knight, you see a lot of like the BlackBerry style phones, which is very funny to me. So it's I don't think that's, but I do think that like both are meant to be modern in terms of their setting.
The thing that I always compare them to is two different like wingsuit scene. Like we'll take like the moment Seth's talking about, that moment where he goes to Japan, straps the dude to the thing and flies him up, and he's
Shanghai. It's not Japan.
Or excuse me, sorry, Shanghai. My fault. He goes to Shanghai and like he's doing his wingsuit, he's doing all his high tech. Versus when Rob Pattinson, as I like to call him, when he has to first use his wingsuit, he goes to the top of like the tallest police building in the world, and like he gets in the room, he's like, okay, shoot, he attaches this and then goes this and then pulls this out and does this and makes his own little wingsuit and then jumps down and then he hits a light pole. And I like that.
The cape is clearly more for aesthetic.
Yeah,
than
like
function.
The cape doesn't do anything.
Like in Dark Knight, it kind of does something, but then you look into the Batman, when he glides, he has to use like a wingsuit.
Yeah, and I like that. They're both different like versions of it, but I like that moment in Dark Knight where it's like he does have all these fancy tech and all these gadgets, but he still has to like. It makes it feel a little bit more real when it's not instant. Like he doesn't just flow the cape up and it turns into a wingsuit. He actually has to like attach it to himself and jump down, and he's never done this before. This is his first time doing it, so he messes it up and like hits a pole and then hits a bus and has to like limp away. And also that's a good point for or a comment for both these films. Both these films, I feel, do a good job of making Batman still feel human. Like he still takes hits and like he gets hurt. More so in the Dark Knight, that's more of a issue and like kind of a big plot point in the sequel, Dark Knight Returns. But still, in both these movies, like when Batman like gets hit or gets punched, like first of all, he actually does it. He's not perfectly blocking everything. He will take a jaw hit or like mess up his wingsuit and like hit the ground. And you see like he's limping around. I keep referencing the other films, but in Dark Knight Rises, there's a moment where Alfred's like picking up a log, and he's like, "What's the point of all these push-ups if you can't lift a stupid log?" And it shows that like both these films do a good job keep reminding you it's like this is a guy. This guy doesn't have superpowers, and that's
I think a good like example you need from like the Dark Knight is the opening of the film. In the opening, they release the dogs and they basically bite through him, and he gets some wounds from that. Yeah. And then like whenever he's back with like I can't remember if it's Alfred or Lucius, but he's talking about like, hey, I need to mess with this. We need to change the armor up to be able to deal with dogs now. And so so there's like a lot of like back and forth of just kind of like, well, we might be able to do this and allow you to be more mobile, but also it's not going to be able to. They even make a joke like you could turn your head now, which is like I think referencing Michael Keaton's Batman.
Just turn the whole body to see.
But they talk about how like we're based. The gist of the conversation is we're giving you more mobility at the sacrifice of protection.
Yeah, no, I like that. Speaking of like mobility, sorry.
Yeah, so I guess what the point I was trying to make is like Batman doesn't in the Dark Knight maybe doesn't show off his wounds as much as like maybe the Batman. Yeah. But I do think there are things where like something happens and then that causes him like bodily harm and he's forced to react to that.
Yeah, he's very Iron Man in that. It's like once he fails one way, he changes his suit so it doesn't get messed up again, or that same thing can't happen to him. Speaking of the suits, and I'll shoot this question to Randy first. Strictly speaking of design of the suits, do you have a preference of like how either suit looks like that?
Patterson.
All right. Would you like to elaborate? Okay, go ahead.
Yeah.
Or just Patterson.
Yeah. So, I guess they're both different in regards to how they go about things. Like I feel like the Christian Bale Batsuit is more armor based, and it feels almost like an exoskeleton suit that's like hugs him and stuff. In comparison to Robert Pattinson's suit, I like that the head and the cowl are actually kind of separated. He has like a bit of a collar, so he is able to turn his neck. Like,
yeah,
I know like it's a bit of a deviation from the normal Batman suit design, but I really enjoy it. I think it was a nice, fresh take, and like it feels that his suit is more like realistic, and like it could be something like he could maybe not necessarily like make himself, but if you have the right contacts, which I'm sure a billionaire might have, he could find out a way of getting it made. In comparison to, I know the Christian Bale one, and this is kind of a criticism in general, it's just like, yeah, it's just old military tech that they prototyped that they discontinued or whatever. Which, to be fair, they do modify it, like moving on through the films and whatnot of like, all right, let's, try this, to adjust it. But yeah, just like aesthetically speaking, I like that the Pattinson one looks a little more like less high tech, even though like it's still like bulletproof and stuff. I mean, both are, but yeah.
No, yeah.
I like all the little details that like are in it in regards to like, here's a little like spot for having to inject like medicine or whatever, or having It's a little silly, but I also kind of enjoy it at the same time that the batarang is like part of his chest.
Yeah, you
like
can take
piece.
it off and throw it. Yeah.
Yeah, so like I kind of I like it, but I also don't like it. I don't know, but it's cool.
Yeah, that feels like
It's different.
classic,
it's unique.
Yeah, that feels very classic Batman. Him taking the actual symbol off and using it. Yeah, versus Patter. I don't dislike either design, but I know what you mean. Of just like it almost feels like.
Oh yeah, it's not a knock against like the Christian Bale one.
Yeah.
Like it's still a dope design.
I always think like Christian Bale to me, his looks very much like almost like a Power Ranger, if that makes sense. Like it's sleek, it's silky, it's almost like an action figure. Versus Patterson, it's like he's got a bunch of tools and shit, and you see where everything is. Like you see, like he could he's not just pulling. He's not like a cartoon. Like he's not just pulling every gadget out of his ass. No, like for. Like how does that fit? Like no, you see where his like rope is and like his gauntlets that he has.
I think like the easiest comparison I can think of is Batman Arkham Asylum and Arkham City suit versus Batman Arkham Knight suit. That's the best comparison I can think of because like
that's fair.
Asylum and City kind of had that like sort of animated series sort of look to the Batman suit, but still tried to like modernize it a little bit. Just like, okay, it looks a little bit more like body armor or something like that. Whereas by the time you get to like Arkham Knight, it's just like, no, this is full on like a damn super suit. Like segmented. Like you could definitely tell like this looks like metal now. This isn't just like Kevlar or whatever.
Definitely. So before I move on to villains, I got one last question about our two Batmans. And Robert, this one's going to you.
All right.
Who has the better ride? Which Batmobile do you like better? Do you like the Tumbler, or do you like the Batman's Batmobile?
I haven't really thought about the Batmobiles. I think I liked the Christian Bale one a bit more. I just think it's like its design. Was the Batman's the one that he could turn to a motorcycle, or is that?
That's the Dark Knight.
That was the Dark Knight.
The Dark Knight. I like that.
The Dark Knight has like the ejectable motorcycle that he has. I will say that motorcycle is sick. Cool. I love the motorcycle.
It has like a weird name too. It's like the Side Cycler or something like that.
Because like when he drifts, the wheel starts spinning like that, which I don't know, Randy, you tell me if that actually helps or not. I don't know, but it looks so fucking cool.
No, not at all. But it's cool as hell.
It's so sick. Like
you got to find a balance of function and form, and they definitely chose form there. But like, it's cool as shit.
It's so cool.
I thought you were going to ask me which one I liked better as like Bruce or Batman.
Oh, that would have been a good one. Well, which one do you like better as Bruce Wayne?
I think I like Christian Bale more as Bruce Wayne, but I think you also see him more as Bruce Wayne because Robert Pattinson, I think the majority of the screen time you see him as Batman rather than Bruce.
Definitely.
Yeah, which I think is an intentional choice.
Even when you do see him as Bruce Wayne, he's like
he kind of looks like shit.
He's got the emo hair.
He looks like he's about to die.
You look at him and like, you would go out and beat the shit out of just homeless people. Like, that is something I can see this guy doing. Versus like Christian Bale's is like, I love the scenes where he's being a playboy. He's being like a just like the Bruce Wayne that Gotham thinks Bruce Wayne is. I think that's great, and I think that is like a good encapsulation of like in the film he talks about like his real mask or his real disguise is Bruce Wayne and like that character. I think Dark Knight does that really well of like showing how different he has to pretend to be in front of other people, like this playboy, this character that he puts on. Whereas Pattinson's like, I'll show up if I have to. I guess I'll keep this company alive, Alfred. Like, Alfred has to force him to go to meetings.
Yeah, which is like a tie of like, once again, it's I think this is not exclusive to just these films, but just Batman media in general is always like, there's the famous thing where I can't remember if it was from the animated series or not, but I do remember there's that like a very notorious line about like Bruce doesn't see himself as Bruce. Bruce sees himself as Batman, and Bruce is the mask. I think I think a way to kind of give this, because before we leave this, I think the more compelling thing to talk about, more than just the characters themselves, is the arc that Batman/Bruce Wayne has to undergo in each film. Because I feel like both have to deal with some sort of personal arc, reckoning with their relationship about who or what Batman is, and which one has the more compelling story. Mm-hmm. I think The Dark Knight, especially with its ending, has like such a compelling like argument for itself. Just because it's how much Bruce has to like. Not only we see him have to sacrifice so much of like himself, like he loses like Rachel, even though he was initially going to go rescue her. He has to like, he basically severely has to like damage his relationship with Gordon, and it really pushes things to the limit with like Alfred, and obviously Dent. Everything just goes to shit there. I feel like at the end where he's like, "Fuck, I'm just gonna have to basically just." If there's any hope of like not allowing the corruption I've been trying to keep at bay to take root and allow cynicism to win out, I'm just gonna have to take the role of the bad guy here. Mm-hmm. And like he willingly takes that. That whole final monologue is so compelling. Flip side of that though, I think the Batman with Robert Pattinson's take on it is a very, very good arc with his character, because so much of his story is about him, and he even talks about like almost the futility of whenever he does it, is like he has been so focused on the vengeance aspect that he kind of it's like, and he was never concerned with being a hero. I think he kind of makes that clear. He never was really wanting to be a hero, but once he starts to see the impact of like all the Riddler goons, it's like, we became this way. We became radicalized because of you, which, you know, I think speaks to real life a lot, where basically people get really attached to personalities or fictional characters that we see in real life on online social media. They make it a part of who they are, and they get fucking radicalized. They think that's like, oh, this is what I need to be. And like Batman's like, shit, like, even though this was not my intention, I inspired these kinds of people. They got the wrong message, as is normal with the lack of media literacy. Unfortunately,
no, I definitely want to get. Yeah, I'll wait till we talk about the villains to get more into Riddler. But no, I love that point of just like how each Batman affects the worlds that they live in.
It's like
in regards to how that affects them, and then also kind of the reverse of that of how obviously the world has an effect on like the Batman like themselves, whether it be what Seth was getting about with the Dark Knight of having to take on this responsibility of like, well, I have to play the bad guy here for the betterment of society. Or I really enjoy that at the end of the Batman is like having to become more than just like more than vengeance or whatever, of having to.
He has to be the hero.
Become hope.
I love that. Like, in my opinion, the Batman, which is probably, in terms of the live action films, the darkest and most cynical Batman film, also has weirdly one of, if not the most optimistic message about Batman at the end, where it is all about like, Batman is like, you can't have Batman just be vengeance and darkness all the time. It's just like, he's got to be the hero. I think it was such a great scene with like one of the last bits of scenes that we get with him is him like helping the woman out of like the flood and escorting her to the chopper, and she doesn't want to let him go. And then it's like there's that like moment, like the quietness of it. And I think of like just like they realize, like, it's Pattinson realizing like, I have to be more human. I have to be more hopeful for these people, because otherwise the alternative is the Riddler. And I like that. I think that's like, and I feel, and I also think it speaks to the time these films came out in. I think for some reason, The Dark Knight almost feels a little bit more like ideological, if that makes sense. Or rather, it feels more idealist. That's the word.
Yeah.
It feels more like an idealist version of Batman, where like, well, yes, like he's gonna do it because he's good. I love this scene, but like also like, yes, the people on the boats are not gonna like blow each other up because there's gonna be a person who's gonna stand up and say, no, we're not doing this. But I think as time has gone on and things have gotten more cynical, I think Batman is the Batman is recognizing like, yes, there is cynicism. Yes, people are going to take the wrong messages and think they're doing the right thing, but doing something far, far worse. But there is still like ways where compassion and like empathy can win through, not just a relentless pursuit of justice. So there's a give and take there with like their different messages. It's kind of hard for me to settle on which is the better arc for the characters, honestly.
Yeah. It's interesting because like both are actually like kind of almost very similar in like they start off who they are, but both characters change their perspective and change the kind of Batmans they are due to the circumstances of the city. Like they both have the same kind of realization of like, I need to do blank because if I don't, the place I live and the people I care about and my community are going to get worse. And the only difference between the two is one of them needs to be kind of like ostracized and like seen as like the quote unquote villain, and the other needs to kind of go the opposite way and be like, I need to be seen as the hero of this place because that will make this place better if I do that. And
yeah, that's kind of what I got from like the end of like the Batman, is like he kind of realizes I need to be the hero here. It's from him like kind of leading the people through the water and helping them like evacuate. You see Batman assisting with the rescue effort, which you would never see the Christian Bale Batman do that. Like he would just kind of go in and out, like through the night. But here you kind of see him more as like a, he's a lot more present in it.
Yeah. That moment also has like one of my favorite shots of the film, of that moment where he's walking through the water and he's literally like the beacon of light guiding people forward. Yeah. To me, like that image is like, that's the ending of the movie right there. It's like,
it's not that I don't, and it's not like don't think Christian Bale would do it, but I also think it is very different attitudes of filmmaking, and it's also based on time. I think when Dark Knight came out, there was much more focus of like, people are here to watch Batman because they want to see him fight. Mm-hmm. But I think as time has gone on, people are like, well, I think people are open to the idea of a more, how do we put this, a more emotionally available Batman.
Yeah.
So I think that's hard. I don't think that. I also, maybe I'm wrong, but I feel like, yes, you're right. It doesn't happen in The Dark Knight, but I feel like, if I remember correctly, in The Dark Knight Rises, The Dark Knight Rises has like a scene where, is it Batman like helping people evacuate the city a little bit? Like, because everything got blown apart, he's actually using like the Batwing and stuff like that to blow open the things that were previously closed off by Bane.
He uses the Batwing to get the police out of the sewer. I think that's right. He uses it so that the police can come back, because that was the reason that it became anarchy, was people were still stuck because they blew up the bridges. But, and again, this moment doesn't really make a lot of sense to me in that movie. It was a little tirade of, for some reason, Gordon has the idea of, he knows Bane's down there, I'm going to send every single member of the police force inside the sewers. We ain't leaving nobody upstairs. Everyone's going in. And then they get locked in. But then Batman frees them, and they don't leave the city. They go out and like help him fight.
Right. Yeah, that in Dark Knight Rises is. There's a reason why we're talking about The Dark Knight and not The Dark Knight Rises. So yeah, no, that's a fair point. I think if there is a good, because I want to give everybody a fair shake here, and I think there's the good equivalent scene, not quite saving because he's still punching his way through it, but like one of my favorite Batman scenes in The Dark Knight, where it's like it's Batman just doing his thing, and is the scene where doctors are clowns, clowns are doctors.
I knew it. Yep.
Where that
was the exact same thing I was thinking of. Yep.
It's one of my favorite takes of Batman, because he's running on a very limited timetable here. He's put in an impossible situation where he is now wrestling with not only dealing with like the criminals, making sure the hostages are safe, but he also now has to deal with police and SWAT and somehow dispatch all of them without killing any of them.
Yeah, and make sure the police don't kill the hostages because they don't know.
At the same time, and that scene still holds up dramatically. Before the Batman came out, and there's also a reason why we don't talk about him too much right now, is there was Batfleck. We had just seen Batman vs Superman, and there was a lot of contention about people whether they like Batfleck, because it's just like, well, the first time we introduced him, he's just straight up killing motherfuckers all over the film. And there's the warehouse scene. And a lot of people would bring up the comparison against like the warehouse scene is Batman's scene there in The Dark Knight. And it's like Batman got to do all this cool shit and saved all these lives and didn't kill a single person here. Whereas like fucking Jesus Christ, it was like it's more like watching The Punisher than watching Batman with like Batman versus Superman. But we're not talking about that.
Yeah.
Martha. Sorry.
I'm not the biggest
But yeah,
either.
But God, I just love that scene so much. Just how well done it is and how quick on the fly, but there's still planning going on. I still love the one where like that part of the film where he's like wrapping up all the SWAT members on a rope and they don't realize it, and like attaches the one guy. It's just like, let him go, and he just kicks him and they all like fucking fall out the building. So fucking cool. So
definitely when it comes to like action scenes, Dark Knight takes it every day. Dark Knight has so many cool freaking like action moments and like moments.
I don't know.
I don't know though.
I don't know. Okay, Dark Knight does have really good action.
But the Batman, the club scenes, all of them
I fucking love it.
That's pretty good.
Are
love
stellar.
it.
That's the thing.
And like I fucking loved when he came in and like at the end to the stop like the Riddler like wannabes or whatever.
Yeah.
And like him bursting through that ceiling, dog, I was losing my mind.
You know,
when he came like all those charges, and they just start playing the Batman theme, and he just drops down and starts beating everyone's ass. It's just like I was losing it.
The way he was fighting too, like I'm not saying that it's directly inspired by the video game, but I feel like this is the closest to actual live action of like this is free flow combat of Batman, because the way he would like. I still think of the one. There's like one part. It's a little scene, but it gets me every time. Where he like quickly dashes up, grabs the rifle from one guy, beats him down, and then quickly flips around and just like knocks the shit out of another guy coming at him with the rifle. And it's like that's free flow combat. Like
maybe that's why I enjoyed
seamlessly going in between them. Yeah.
It is
so no, I feel that.
You can insert the meme of like. Everywhere I go, I see his face with my score versus Seth's song.
Now I gotta remember
I'll send it.
No, but I just have to remember to put it in.
I enjoyed that combat system so damn much.
I was thinking that you're gonna reference the thing that seems to happen with every time there's a Batman fight scene is where they put in like the Arkham like combo counter. And then they like count it up and stuff like that.
That would be a really good edit. Would be like an Arkham.
I think I've seen that.
Like,
I'm like
counter.
90% sure it's happened already. Trust me, people are quick on it. I think it happened the first week that movie was out.
All right, I'll have to search it.
And then when you finish it, it's the sound of the bats going. I can't make the noise, but you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
No, the combat, but see, ironically, when you guys both said that, that's not even the scene I was thinking of when I thought of like best action scene in the Batman, because I was thinking of the car chase. Against Penguin.
That's dope as hell too.
I
was losing it.
That's also really good.
And like it ends with that shot of him walking upside down in the fire. I'm like, oh hell yeah.
Well, unfortunately, it doesn't end there. It ends after he bends down and looks at him, and I'm like, I understand you had to fill enough time for like the musical score to hit right. But like, just leave it with like him looking at his boots, standing there. I felt like that would have been more menacing.
I like this.
I didn't want to see him coming down, and just like looking at him like.
I don't really have a reason why. I do like the head bending down, but I can understand that. I feel, oh god, but the car scene. Here's the thing, though. It's funny you say that because I feel like the Dark Knight actually has the superior car scene, because the scene where they're. Because it's the fucking like the no dude. First off, it's them because who are they escorting? Is it the bookie dude, or is it Aaron Eckhart's character, or is it? It's Harvey Dent. That's right.
Yeah,
Harvey
oh,
Dent.
Harvey.
Yeah.
No, they're doing
Yeah. It's Harvey Dent because he just confessed, quote unquote, that he is the Batman. They're escorting him, and then the truck comes in. And granted, a lot of this is the back and forth of also Joker being present, and we'll get into him later. But like him, like shooting from the truck, I love like the playfulness of him. Like, come on, give me the RPG. Like stuff like that. But then Batman's tumbler swooping in and tanking the second shot is so fucking cool.
Oh my god! Yeah, when he jumps up and tanks it for him, I was like, oh, that's sick.
And it keeps going. It's the tumbler sequence going against this, and then the fucking what's next after that? Oh yeah, and then the Sidewinder. I don't know if that's the actual name. The Bat Cycle comes out, which, by the way, I think it's a huge disservice that they should have. I wish they never would have shown the Bat Cycle in the trailers and in the posters, because could you imagine how much the audience would pop up if they did not know the Bat Cycle was in this and that scene happened? Fucking stellar.
That's true. It would have been stellar.
The Bat Cycle scene, him going through the buildings, chasing them down, going around the Joker's truck, flipping it over, and then just the iconic, like, come on, hit me, I want you to hit me. Like,
well, I feel like that's less of
that truck flip,
the chase scene
done in real life too. That truck flip was real.
Yeah. But I mean, I feel like that's less of the chase scene, and that's more of talking of Heath Ledger's acting.
Yeah.
Well, yes, the chase scene was cool, but I think like he is what amplified that.
That's what it culminates to, is what I'm saying. And I feel like, the chase is so good. And versus the chase in the Bat, I'm not saying it's bad. It's just it culminates to like, oh yes, now we get to talk to like the Penguin.
It culminates into my favorite scene of them trying to interrogate the Penguin and realizing that they were so right. It's like, what are you trying? Come on! I don't want to see that. It's like, you are Colorado. It's law. That's the worst smash I ever heard. I was dying.
Yeah.
I was dying laughing.
No, and that is great. I just, which is more the narratively compelling ending. I think
one
also,
is way more
but there's also really good touches though with the Batman as well, though. Like the build up also to the car scene itself with the musical score. The sound design
the car
of the car itself
acting like a fucking beast, like a character of its own in regards to being like having intimidation factor. Not that like the bat, like the Tumbler doesn't. I don't know. I feel like this is just like a different level.
No. Yeah, and there's also another thing where like one thing to the Batman's credit too with its car chase scene is the fact that like one of the issues I had, and you could argue that like maybe they had cleared out the streets and stuff like that beforehand, but in The Dark Knight, most of the streets are largely empty except for the important cars, the truck, the police cruisers, the armored car, Batman himself. Versus in the Batman, it's Penguin just getting in the car, driving just right into like traffic during an extremely rainy day when it's backed up. So you have Batman having to contend with all this, and then the Penguin like losing his shit and even like firing at other cars to like crash into each other and screw up the Batman as well. So like there's a lot more tension there too, just because so much is going wrong, which I really like.
I also will say like I made this joke, and Robert, I know you said you like the Tumbler more, and I think the Tumbler is cool, and the Bat Cycle in it is really cool. Like, don't get me wrong, but I think Pattinson's car looks like a Batmobile. That's the like when I think of the Batmobile in my head, it's closer to that. Versus the Tumbler is a tank, and it's cool looking, but nothing about it screams Batman to me, other than it's painted black. Does that make sense? And so to be like,
I get you for that.
I don't know. I don't know.
If
we talk about it like that,
I think with the Tumbler, I think just the fact that he has the Batmobile in it that he could just eject into that is just really freaking cool.
Yeah.
I'm gonna say then, if that was the criticism, then I feel like neither are adequate Batman or Batmobiles, because then I'm looking like Michael Keaton. Then that's what screams Batman to me, because it's literally
that's my favorite Batmobile. Design. Yeah, that's my favorite Batmobile's Keaton.
I think in regards to like a modern
without a grappling hook, I love that shit.
in regards to like a modern Batmobile, I'd say Patterson's is closer to where like yes, it still resembles a bat, but also it's not like, as I kind of stated with the suit, it's not just old military tech. It's almost believable that like he could have that and be made, and but yeah, I mean it still does have inspiration from, I'd say, the like the animated series, because doesn't the animated series also have these like vents and stuff on like
It
the hood
does.
of it?
Yeah,
And
it
stuff.
does.
So like it copies that, but it still has like the afterburner. And while it doesn't have the massive like fins or something on the back representing the wings,
I love
the
the
rear
fins on the
arches,
Batman.
the rear arches are, there is a point on them
Yeah.
and they're lifted up to a degree. So like although they're not fins themselves, it is still imitating that style, but is a little more
You see
reserved.
the inspiration
And I
behind it.
I fucks with it so
I
hard.
fucked with that
All
thing,
right,
too.
let me
Because it's
ask
this
you
cool
this.
like Dodge
I-
Challenger type of thing.
But also, if I
But,
did
like-
have to pick a favorite, if we were talking about every Batman, Keaton's Batmobile by far. That shit's
It's
great.
definitely the most iconic.
That
It's
one's the most iconic.
there's
But if we're just
no
talking about
there's
these-
no hands down.
Yeah, if we're just talking about
Yeah,
these two,
confident.
then it's the Batman's car.
Here's one thing to kind of help like settle this. Instead of doing all this stuff about talking about art design and all that and trying to be fancy, we'll just make this simple. Which car would you rather drive? Would you rather drive the Tumbler or would you rather ride the Batmobile from the Batman?
The
Like,
Batman.
which
The
is
Batman.
The Batman.
Exactly.
Batman.
I would also want to drive the Batman's first.
Yeah, I
like,
want to drive his, but I think that world is the function's cool. But I'd probably drive the Batman's.
Well, I mean,
Yeah.
you can technically, if you got a couple $1 million, there's a company that will build a Tumbler Batmobile for you.
Bro, that's fucking wild.
If you're sitting on a couple $1 million.
Well, we won't.
Yeah, you can buy one.
That's
I think they're
fucking
based in
crazy.
Florida or Texas, one of the two. But yeah,
That's so sick. There ain't no
like
way.
I said, if you got it, if you,
I
I,
feel
I think it's like $2 million starting. So if
Also-
you got $2 million and you want to be Batman,
I also feel like the only way you could have actual fun with the Tumbler is they would need to set up like, all right, here's a special little course with a bunch of like destructible concrete walls you're allowed to drive
Yeah, it's
through.
a
Go
monster
for it, because I
truck.
feel like
That's what the Tumbler
Yeah,
is. It's a monster truck.
yeah,
Which
yeah,
is
so
cool.
it's kind of, but like monster truck versus really sick car, and it's
Yeah.
like really sick car is probably going to win out.
I mean
yeah.
that really sick car is still a freaking like,
No, it's a beast.
like a
yeah.
tank to a degree because it went through a fucking concrete like cylinder.
Yeah.
That is true. It did do that.
So it's not like it's it's not like it's made of paper mache or something.
Yeah, I definitely feel like but it's the thing you said, Randy, where it's just like the Tumbler is definitely, you could see its military roots versus like, I think what is cool about looking at the Batman is you could definitely see that Bruce was like, I'm gonna take this car and I'm just gonna soup the shit out of it. Like
Yeah, it's still
basically,
a shit ton of like custom work, but like yeah.
It's slightly more like. you
listen,
see how
he's
he
got
made
that
this
like
basement,
rich
yeah.
orphan money. He can do it.
Yeah. Well, going from before we move on, because this is the main character, and this is like our biggest talking point of the Batman. Is there anything else you guys want to go about the Batman himself before I start asking questions about the particular villains of either film?
I will say this much. And I think because we should probably also kind of make clear our stances on this, because I know that I've been kind of doing a lot of both sidisms. So I think here's my take with like the Batmans respectively. I think, and this is just kind of like also my stance on the films in general. I think the Dark Knight is the better movie. And in a sense, it is just a better, well-made, paced-out movie. And I also look at like the Dark Knight in that is just like he serves his function as the character very well, because there's a lot of other different characters that need their time and attention in this film as well. And I think Bruce does a good job of like undergoing his own arc in that film. That being said, though, I also think, and this is such a cliche thing to say it, but I'm going to say it anyways, the Batman is, even though the Dark Knight is a better film, the Batman is just a better Batman movie and story. And so I think Pattinson's take on Batman is more what I want to see. It feels more comic booky. It feels more character driven. It feels like there's more like emotion. We didn't even get to really talk about some great emotional moments, and I don't Not that they're not there in the Dark Knight. I think there's stuff you can point to, like a lot of like Bruce's interactions with Alfred in general. But here's the thing: I think the Alfred interaction that takes the cake for me is in the Batman. Whenever he goes to see him in the hospital,
Yep.
and like that scene is just so well done. Him kind of finally letting some of that guard drop, and also just like it's such a complicated scene because it's like, yes, he's relieved that his one family member is still alive, but also there's still anger there stewing, which is like, you didn't tell me that my parents did all these things or were involved in this shit. And it's a tricky situation, and I think both Andy Serkis and Robert Pattinson do such a fantastic job there. So I gotta say, if we're talking about the character themselves, I think the Batman is the better character.
The way that I kind of see
Robert Pattinson's take.
The way that I kind of see it is similar to yours, but like the way I see it is like, if you take both these Batmans, which one would I want to see like interact with other characters from DC? Like, who do I want to see if like this was taken to like James Gunn or whatever? I don't think either need to, but if that was the question, I want the Batman. That one feels more like the comic book, like compelling. Again, I agree with you in different ways. I agree with you that Dark Knight is the better film, period. More so about things we'll talk about in the future. But I definitely see where you're coming from of like, the Batman is if we're just looking at the particular character, that's the one who I'm like, I want to see more of this guy. I want to see what this Batman turns into in the future, and I really want to follow his story more. Versus Dark Knight, I'm like, we got it. Like I like if it was just the Dark Knight alone that came out, it would still have been great. And I'm like, I got his character arc. I don't know if I need or want more. I mean, the world's great, but I definitely want to see the Batman expanded more and seen into like, you know, what is he? How does he react to other rogues gallery? How does that fit into this world?
I'm of that pretty much same opinion. I want to see, like, I'm excited for whenever they do make a sequel for this.
Yeah.
So,
all right.
I want to see what Pattinson can do.
Yeah. Well, speaking of sequels, with sequels comes more villains. So let's talk about.
We didn't really ask Robert
sorry,
about
Robert,
like
yeah.
which. Yeah. Because okay, I'm just gonna assume. So basically, all three of us are that have talked so far, minus Robert, have said that like Batman from the Batman is better.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, so for like as Batman, I think Robert Pattinson just does a better job just encompassing the character as a whole. Because I like Christian Bale playing Batman, but I think what gets him more than anything is the voice. Like
Yeah.
I don't really care for his Batman voice.
It's very memeable.
It's one of those things where, weirdly enough, Batfleck kind of solved that issue. It was Batfleck, right, that had the voice distortion on it.
Oh yeah, he had like
It
a
was.
modifier. Yeah.
Weirdly enough, it probably would have helped if they would have done that with Christian Bale. Which that kind of Batman, which is very tech focused and like cutting edge and all that, that would not be a stretch.
Yeah. Honestly, for me, I feel like that almost feels like a Christian Bale like decision. Like he's the one that like came onto set and started talking like that. And they asked him like, "Hey, why are you doing that?" He's like, "Cause this is how Batman sounds like." Like that feels like I don't know. I could be wrong. Maybe that's a Nolan thing that he asked for, but that feels very like how Christian Bale is.
Yeah, I feel like for me personally, I don't have a problem with it. Me personally, it's one of those things where like when people point out, I'm like, oh yeah, it is weird. But whenever I'm in the moment watching the movie, I really don't give a shit about like the voice. So that doesn't really like bother me. But I can definitely see after hearing some people talk about it, it's like I can see where it bothers other people. But for me, it's like the voice doesn't really bother me at all.
It's only like certain lines too, like I'm not wearing hockey pants and the Rachel line, which
to be fair,
yeah.
I think
Rachel!
it's kind of humorous.
Yeah, it's a bit humorous, but it feels a bit out of tone with the rest of the movie, you know? Like it doesn't quite fit with the.
There's actually I don't know. There's quite a bit of jokes. Like actually rewatching The Dark Knight, there actually is quite a bit of like jokes in there. One of my favorites it actually is one involving Bruce. Whenever he crashes into the convoy and he gets out, he's like, "You think I should go to a hospital?" It's just like, you don't watch the news, do you?
Oh yeah, actually no, I like that
was
joke.
fun.
Yeah, that's a good joke.
Yeah, that's a great joke.
You don't watch Mr. Wade. All right, but so Robert, are you also saying the Batman from the Batman?
Yeah, I think he has a better Batman overall. As a movie, I think I enjoyed The Dark Knight more, but for like the character himself, I think the Batman character in the Batman was done a lot better.
Yeah, I think we're all kind of in agreement with that. All right, point to the Batman for Batman. But what's Batman without his villains? And I feel like this one, there's an obvious person we have to talk about. But before we talk about that person, I want to point out something. Each of these movies has more than one. They both have main villains, but each do have more than just the one. And I want to say, like, there isn't a bad villain in either of these films. And I think that's one of the things that elevates these movies so great. Like, Batman himself is an interesting character, but what sets good Batman films and just okay Batman films apart, that's the villains. And it's not just Joker. It's, Riddler's amazing. Turning Riddler into a Reddit user is great. Two-Face is done...
more 4chan, but continue.
Sure. Whatever.
No, Reddit could get that kind of bad too. Come on.
I suppose.
Two-Face is done really well in the film. Like, he is like the crutch of this film. And then also kind of the underrated person in all this, the Penguin. The Penguin has done he's a new take on it, but he's entertaining to watch. He's compelling. He pushes the narrative forward. I haven't watched the series that came after him, but a lot of people say it's really good.
It is pretty good.
And so, I just want to say, we're going to talk about all these villains, and there's definitely going to be the standout one. But none of them are bad. Every single person kills it as their respected villain.
I'm going to say that what we should do is we should focus on the Joker and the Riddler because they are the primary antagonists for most of the film. Also,
I just want to make sure I get
for me,
all four.
Yeah, I
right?
like. Yeah. I really. I know some people think Two-Face is a weird late addition. I actually really like Two-Face in this movie.
Yeah.
But it can't be ignored that Two-Face kind of is sort of like a pawn of
the Joker.
He got played basically.
Yeah.
The result of the Joker.
Yeah, he is part of Joker's plan, and he is the result. Yeah, as Robert put it, he is the result of it. And then with the Penguin, he's basically he's just not really the focus villain. He's just both in the film and in the scope of the plot. He's kind of small fry for Batman.
Yeah. No, they both are side villains or almost like side quests.
Yeah, not Harvey, but definitely Penguin. Yeah, definitely Penguin.
Yeah. No, both these films definitely have their main antagonist is Joker and Riddler, and I realize that. But I think the inclusion of obviously Two-Face is part of the main plot you have to have. But I think the inclusion of Penguin works in the film. I like what he does and what he adds to this. He also has some of the funniest lines in the film. So maybe that's what's elevated me. But I think definitely our time should be spent comparing those two performances, the two main ones, versus that. So. Yeah, honestly, Seth, you're the next one to ask a question of. I don't know how to compare it, so I'll just ask which one you want to talk about first. Joker or Riddler?
I feel like there's and maybe I'm wrong, maybe I'm just biased because not biased, but I don't want to do too much over the Batman glazing. I really like the Batman, but I want to give Dark Knight its fair share.
Yeah.
And I think I want to start off strong by talking about really the Dark Knight's strongest element, which is the Joker.
Exactly.
For a lot of people, the Joker even like overshadows Batman in this film, which I really like Christian Bale. I think he does a great job, but it's true. I mean, it's just a fact.
Heck,
it's hard to deny that.
The opening of the film is Joker, not Batman. That's how the film opens.
Oh yeah, I really love his take on it, how chaotic Joker is, his little like mannerisms, and at the fact that like when you look back at 2008, we really didn't get a take like Joker on the time. And I remember also very distinctly that people at first hated the idea of this Joker. We're just like, oh, he looks like, I hate using this term, but like they called Heath Ledger's take on the Joker like he looks like a druggie and stuff like that, which I don't think that's a nice term. Yeah, and it's just like that's and all kinds of things. They're just like, there's no way they're gonna Heath Ledger's actually gonna pull off the Joker well, and he did astoundingly. He is so captivating and menacing in this film, but he also has like where the moments where he is like unserious is just pulled off like so well. The classic bit of like the hospital blowing up and he's like hitting the detonator. He's like, what the fuck? What's wrong with this? And then he like slaps it, and it's just like, and then it goes off. Some people say that that was actually something that did happen on set, where the explosions didn't go off quite at the right time, so Heath Ledger just stayed in character a little bit longer. I don't know how much I believe that. That's just like a common thing that's told around, but it's fun to think it's true.
Yeah,
and cool I could definitely see, and I could definitely see Heath Ledger doing something like that. But I think I want to get, there's all the mannerisms and all the scenes of it, but I just really want to get to what makes Joker work for me is his kind of message and how he carries a lot of the themes about corruption in systems of power, where basically Joker kind of says like, hey, all society are just laws that we make up in our head, agreements that we all decide to go with. But we also have people, not just the criminals, but the police, the politicians as well, that don't play by the same rules as you or me. So it seems to be his proposal is chaos. Why should we play in the same rules when even the people who say they do won't? I think of the quote where it's just like, no one panics when everything goes as planned. I could tell you tomorrow a truck full of soldiers blow up and no one will bat an eye. But if I say one little mayor dies, well, everyone just loses their mind. Yeah. I think there's that's why we talk about the Dark Knight being a better film, because I think there's something about that message that really resonates with a lot of people is Joker is able to tap into our frustrations with the system. And it's just kind of like, it's just like these people who want to protect the system are the ones abusing it. Mm-hmm. And it's just like, why do we bother to even play by their rules? Let's break those rules.
I love sorry.
Yeah, go for it.
I was just gonna say, like, I love like how intelligent and smart this Joker is, despite how also silly and goofy he is, because he has the manner of like he's joking and like laughing around, but like if you watch him and watch carefully, he is like cold and calculated. One of my favorite little details is in the beginning when he's like talking to like the group of people he's doing this hostage thing. He grabs a drink of champagne. It's like, we're having a party, yeah, but he doesn't actually drink it. If you look closely, he throws it over his shoulder and then sips an empty glass just to like freak people. Mm-hmm. And so that's such a moment where like, you don't have to do that. You can just have him drink the thing and it'll be fine. But you show like, no, he doesn't want to drink alcohol because he wants to stay focused and like keep his mind straight. And it's all these moments where you think he's just being silly and cold-hearted, but like, no, he is smart and calculated and he knows what he's doing.
To give you another
step ahead of everybody through the whole movie.
Yeah.
To give you another scene that's a really good example of that is when he goes to see Harvey in the hospital, and he's like,
Harvey doesn't recognize him until he takes the mask off.
Yeah. Well, what's funny to me though is that he is the line he says like, you think I have a plan? I'm like a dog chasing my tail. I don't know what I would do if I caught it.
Yeah.
But whenever he like lets him flip the coin and then holds the gun, if you notice, even though he gives the revolver to Harvey and he holds it up to his head, his thumb is
On the
actually
hammer, yeah.
like on the hammer. So basically, the hammer would basically, I mean, it would hurt, but like basically, the hammer would get caught in his thumb and the gun would not go off.
Yeah.
If things didn't go as planned. So like he's very, and what's funny is like I think one of the few times where things where he actually seems to be actually visibly upset is the scene of like, I love the boat dilemma so much. I love that scene in a lot of ways. But what I love is like that's one of the few times I actually feel like he looks like he's actually frustrated, because the plan was it's just like these people will kill each other, but whenever they don't, he's just like, damn it. Like you could tell like he acts like he doesn't have a plan, but whenever his plan doesn't go the way he wants it to, he does get mad. So I do believe that idea of like he actually is a cold calculating character, but it is all a persona that he is pushing forward of like, no, I'm actually like goofy and silly.
Yeah.
That is part of his plan, is to like disarm his people.
That's my favorite interpretation of like, yeah, that would be like a clown's idea of like, yeah, he seems like a goofball, was like, no, this is a routine. This is like, he knows how people are going to react and how people are going to do it. And it's just such a wonderful performance. And it's just like such an amazing like character. And it really did change Joker as a character, because before Heath Ledger, every interpretation of Joker we had, he was in like essentially a business suit and a like, he was more cartoony, but he had like a tie on and like a purple jacket, and he was the Clown Prince of Prime, and he was like more Mark Hamill's and Jack Nicholson's Joker, which I love.
Cesar Romero, yeah,
and Cesar Romero, and I love those interpretations, but that version was more like, oh, I'm doing this for the fun of it. Like, I'm doing this because this brings me pleasure.
I do have to interrupt this real quick just because it does remind me one of my favorite interpretations of Joker with Cesar Romero. One of my favorite scenes still is just like, oh, Batman, if you were here, I would start pounding you to a pulp. Start pounding Joker.
Oh my god!
I love that scene so much.
But yeah, this interpretation of Joker is, I mean, you know, like people say there, like he looks like a tweaker, he looks like a drug addict, and he's wild and crazy and unpredictable, but that's almost kind of like the persona he puts on. Robert, you can make a persona joke now. It's this mask he puts on to make people either underestimate him or think he's just crazy, when he is like he understands the situation very clearly. And it's a different interpretation of the Joker, and it changed how almost not all of the time, but a lot of the future iterations of the Joker happen or change how they look because of him. Like, you know, obviously like Leto and all the other ones, like after the exception of like the cartoons, like kind of took this more like crazy person mindset.
Yeah, I think what you're saying is people were more willing to embrace a darker take on the Joker, because like I don't think we've had another Joker like Heath Ledger since then that's quite like him. But we've had like more darker takes on the Joker. Like obviously, Leto's was supposed to be more edgy, obviously. Yeah. And then the Joker film, it's a darker take on the Joker. It's definitely not at all like Heath Ledger's Joker in my opinion, but I definitely think once audiences saw Heath Ledger's Joker and liked it, I think filmmakers were more open to that idea of like, oh, okay, we can have a darker Joker and it's okay.
Yeah. No, it's I don't know what more to say about the performance. It's great. It's perfect. I love it. Randy, Robert, any thoughts on Heath Ledger's Joker that we haven't already said?
So I think he kind of summed it up. So I think he really embraces like both aspects of the Joker's. Like, yes, he's crazy, but he's got a plan behind everything. Like, it's not it's organized chaos, if you will.
Yeah, that's
like,
a good.
He wants to bring like lots of like panic or whatever, but I'm losing where I'm going with this. Come back to me.
I know.
It's like chaos on his terms, which is funny. It's almost like contradictory. But like Drew said, it's just like it's almost like part of his act, which I honestly didn't think of that until now talking about it. It's like, yeah, I think that vibes most with like why I like this Joker. I think it's something unconscious we have always known. It's just that like Joker it acts like he's a guy without a plan, but that's part of his shtick.
Yeah.
So yeah.
I'll say, yeah, the scene in the hospital, I mean, you explained it already. He's lying. It is chaos on his terms, and I think you guys summed it up really well. I won't drag it out any longer.
I think the last thing I'll say about him is also like a perfect introduction to this character as well is the opening scene of like and again, it's one of those things where it's like the bank heist is crazy because it's it's blowing up, it's driving a bus through the bank, and then every moment it's like, hey, I'm supposed to kill the vault opener once he opens the vault. Yeah, the safe cracker. And then I kill the money man when he goes and is like, and then one guy who figures out, it's like, you're probably supposed to kill me when we put it. It's like, no, I'm supposed to kill the bus driver. What bus driver? Boom! And the bus driver comes out, hey, what's happening? Bang. And it's just that scene of just like, he calculated every moment to, at what point does this guy need to die? And at what point do I think they're going to betray me and go back to me? Because they will. And what's crazy about all of this is this super elaborate, like, high-stakes thing. He eventually burns that money. He sets it on fire. He doesn't need it. It's more just a message to like get this ball rolling. And like that encapsulates that character of like, it seems chaotic and almost random as it's in motion, but like when you actually look at it, it's like, no, this is a very like thought out idea. It's great. It's wonderful. Yeah.
Also, one of the best Joker laughs behind Mark Hamill's. I still think of like the part where like he's like kind of like the last confrontation with Batman. He's like, you want to know how I got? By the way, you want to know how I got these scars? Like, no, but I know how you got these. And then he fucking like falls over and he's just like laughing all the way down. That's such a great fucking scene. I think one of the strengths too about this Joker. So many good lines, so many good quotable lines. I feel like almost everything that like Joker says can be used, and it might also be, be honest. Like a lot of things have been memed about with with the Dark Knight in the many years it's been out. Notoriously, I feel like the Batman interrogation scene has been memed to hell and back. It's funny because it's almost become like
the victim of the head. They get all fuzzy.
And like what I love too is all the God, this is terrible. It's funny because like the Batman interrogation scene is almost the default now that most people seem to go to for like animation, for example.
Yeah.
I hate this.
I know what you're talking about.
Batman, I found a Pokemon. You know what kind of
What'd you get, Joker?
It's a low putty Batman. It's like, no, Joker.
No. Batman, there's no laws against it. It's not an animal. No, Joker.
Yes, it's very So like so obviously this character is so iconic. Yeah. It's bled so much into our zeitgeist that it's like he's that present.
One last thing, I promise. My last thing, I promise. My other favorite thing about this character is the fact that they understand that that we don't need his backstory. We don't need everything about him. That we know nothing about why the Joker is the way he is. There are theories online of just like, oh, he probably has some kind of military history because he knows how to interrogate people and he knows how to handle a firearm. And then every time he tells them, you want to know how I got these scar stories, it's like slightly different. So it's like, no, you don't know what to believe when he tells you that. And I'm like, oh, that's so good. Because like that keeps him mysterious and interesting of like, you can't trust anything he says because he just keeps like lying about his own past. I'm like, he's wonderful. He's wonderful. Stop making other Jokers. Stop making other live action Jokers. You're not going to do this. This is better. Just stop it.
I feel like the best way going forward with live action Jokers is not to stop doing it, but to stop trying to be like him.
Yes, yeah. That's
I feel like right now is the perfect time. Maybe not with that, which does make me a little concerned with the Batman, like how they're going to try to do their Joker. Because I imagine they're also going to want to do a darker Joker, and I feel like it will pale in comparison to everything else. If anything, if I had my take, I would never try to do the Joker with this take of the Batman going forward.
I would save it for like movie 3 or something.
But I would
establish this for a while before you give it an attempt, and I would
but
probably
like
try
James,
to do something so different.
yeah, but like James Gunn, but like also like for example with like James Gunn, he's kind of made it clear that hey, the Batman is in its own universe. We're not touching it. We're not bringing it into the DCEU that we had planned.
Yeah,
that's gonna be a different take of the Batman. And from what we've seen, it seems like James Gunn wants to get to more of those like kind of like positive kind of feelings with like Superman and Batman and stuff like that. More Brave and the Bold, less Dark Knighty.
Oh, dude, if we get a Brave and the
Batman?
James
what
Gunn,
was that?
Did he work on the Batman?
James Gunn?
No.
I think James Gunn.
Yeah, James Gunn. Yeah, he's the head of the DCEU right now, and he's kind of made it clear that like the Batman is going to exist as its own thing. They're not touching it.
Dude, jokes aside, I know this is off topic. If we get like a Brave and the Bold style movie with like a James Gunn Batman, I would be so down for it. Like a 60s era, like early comic book.
That's why I think now
that.
more than ever, I think people would actually really like a Cesar Romero or a Jack Nicholson style like Joker now.
I would love that.
I think we need that. Honestly, I think we do. I think we're tapped out with like I say that with the Batman. I feel okay. How about this? The Batman is already here to satisfy our dark, edgy take on superheroes. We can have more goofy style too. And I don't mean like quippy style. I mean like just like 1960s and 70s style superheroes. But yeah,
I would love that. But
I think good. I'm glad we got this because we needed to give the Dark Knight a bit of glazing, and I definitely think it has to be villains. But is there? I feel like Robert, Randy, is there anything else you would like to also add? It doesn't even have to be like anything specific. If there's a particular scene you want to shout out with, like the Joker and the Dark Knight.
So I more so want to talk about Dent for a minute more than the Joker.
Yeah, go ahead.
That's fine.
Yeah. I was gonna transition to the next one. Yeah.
Yeah. What I like about Dent in this movie is that you almost like root for him. Like if you're not like aware of like what happens to him to become Two-Face, you almost because you want to see him succeed. It's like even like Bruce wants to see him succeed because in a way that Dent is like his out as the Batman. It's like he doesn't need to be the Batman anymore because Dent could be the hero that Gotham deserves, needs, and his fall from grace because of the Joker kind of gives Batman like, okay, I gotta be Gotham's protector because Dent can't do it anymore because Joker succeeded in his plan of corrupting Dent.
That's how that's exactly how a lot of us like people who knew about Batman when we saw the Dark Knight. It's like, oh, it's Harvey Dent. Well, fuck.
Yeah. It's like everything is going like so well for him. Like he's like putting all these criminals away, and that all kind of goes away because of becoming Two-Face.
Yeah, I feel. Yeah. And I want to add that, like, I think something that we may not have time to talk about is there's a really good, strong supporting cast. I really shouldn't say side cast. Supporting cast in both of these movies. But also, especially with The Dark Knight, I really love Aaron Eckhart as Harvey Dent. I think he does such a good job. Yes, it's been memed so much, but but his line about like, you either die a hero or you live long enough to become the villain is like fantastic. It's so fucking good. Because like especially the build up to it as well, because there's a lot of like this like a little bit like standoffish ex versus the new boyfriend kind of vibe between him and like Bruce kind of going back and forth. And he's like, it's like when he talked about how like Rome had to basically like elect one person to make all the decisions. It's like, isn't that how we got Caesar? And that's where the quote came in. It's just like, it's so good. So I really do like Harvey. And just to shout out the others, I think personally my favorite character in The Dark Knight was outside of Joker for obvious reasons because he's the villain, he's the most interesting. Is James Gordon.
Dude, I was gonna bring up if you did. Both films, amazing Gordons. Both films have perfect Gordons, but yeah.
But Gary Oldman just fucking kills it as like James Gordon in The Dark Knight, especially. Yeah, but both are great though. That's the thing. Like, both have great supporting. I know there's gonna be some people, or maybe all people, disagree with me in this call. I liked Rachel. I thought Rachel was good. Not like super amazing, but I think she did a good job here too, as like sort of like a will they won't they love interest and all that jazz. Yeah, I thought she was good. I thought Maggie Gyllenhaal did a very solid job.
She's kind of
I have no notes really.
Okay, I don't want to be super mean to her because I don't think she does a bad job, but to me she's kind of forgettable. I don't remember.
I think the issue is
that like Batman yelled her name at one point, and I know she's in the film. I know she plays a part, but to me, I don't remember her doing anything substantial other than being a thing that Bruce wants and a thing that also Harvey wants, and then dying, and then that affects their character. So I'm
just gonna be honest. Even back in 2008, we really suck at writing female characters.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
And that's why I have. And like that's the thing. It's like I think she does a solid job with what she's given.
Yeah. But now you want to talk about a good female character. If we're kind of talking about just side characters here, I think Catwoman in the Batman's phenomenal.
She kicks ass so much.
I was gonna save this joke for later, but man, if Zoe Kravitz asked me to leave Gotham forever, Gotham will figure it out without me, man. I'm ditching being Batman. If she tells me we're going to Bloodhaven, hang up the cowl immediately. I'm folding. I'm just gonna put that out there. Y'all don't want me as Batman. I'd fold immediately.
I like how much with Zoe Kravitz's character and with Catwoman is that what I like is it's almost like it's not outright said, but it's almost like an unknowing thing where like how much Batman does kind of start to become a positive influence on her, where she because I think about the ending of the film where most of the film she's out to just protect herself and her roommate. I'm not really quite sure what their relationship was with that one girl.
They were roommates.
They were fucking.
But I do, yeah, I get the.
I'm gonna let you know right now they were fucking.
She moved on pretty quick. Anyways,
yeah, but like, hey man, Pattinson's got that jawline. I understand.
But anyways, what I like about her is like, yes, she is initially a vacuum, but it's almost like a begrudging thing where it's just like how much she has to like towards the end of the movie, where at first she's kind of like looking out for herself, but then she's like, fuck, I guess I'll help out with like these Riddler henchmen too. Like whenever she gets a step in, and I don't know, something about like having a character who, and great that they do this, I think, with all the Catwomen in all these movies and games and shows and media of her, but it always gets me. It's just like, Catwoman, you actually are a good person. You will never admit it, but you are. So she's like helping out like Batman, stuff like that at the end of the film. She cares. She legitimately cares. She just doesn't want to show it. I love that trope.
No, that's great.
Like a cat.
Yeah, very much like a cat. It's like, I love you, but I gotta make sure I keep top. Yeah, I gotta make sure.
Wouldn't I know it?
Yeah, but yeah, like God, we really.
Yeah. Okay.
This came less about like the villains and more like which has the better supporting cast, including the villains, hasn't it?
I mean, to be fair, yeah, that's fair. But so getting back to that, let's talk about the big one from the Batman. And I'll ask Randy because he hasn't been asked a question in a while yet. Randy, what are your thoughts on this interpretation of the Riddler?
I really enjoyed that he is this, like, he looks to be like this intimidating, conniving person, which, like, he is in regards to, like, when he has the mask on and everything like that.
Yeah.
And, like, what the acts and stuff that he does and those, and all that.
Mm-hmm.
But then, like, seeing what, like, we see who he is, and he's, like, just some nerd, basically. And I think that's, like, I mean, yeah, that should be how we see him, as just like, oh, he's just some fucking dork.
Yeah.
I say as I'm an engineer who's also a dork. But
yeah, but you're not a Reddit dork. There's a difference. Or a 4chan dork if you want.
Okay.
Randy, I imagine you don't make women uncomfortable when you talk to them. So, like, yeah, you're cool. You're a cool kind of dork.
I try not to.
Yeah. No, but
I don't. Anyway, and seeing him, yeah, like, be this really, like, talking to, like, the people who support him and stuff, and it's just like this internet forum and whatnot, and, like, it's interesting to see him switch between that, but it also feels very realistic, and so, and having him kind of, like, freak out when Batman is saying to him, like, nah, like, we didn't do this together, we didn't do anything together, like,
no.
Yeah. I remember initially I was put off by that, but I think I was supposed to feel put off by it. So
yeah, because it's like he's pathetic, and it's like, oh, wow, like this is the real villain, which is, I like that. I think he can both. I think what's cool about this Riddler, and I want to go with it, is I will add to this. It feels like he can be both unsettling and pathetic at the same time. The opening sequence is him, like the.
That's terrifying.
Because before the monologue with Batman, like the Dark Knight, it starts with the villain's perspective. Mm-hmm. So just the creepy voyeurism, you hear him breathing. You're just kind of with him, just waiting for the mayor to be by himself, and then, like, he attacks him. And there's a lot of just weird. I almost want to say it is kind of like that true crime icky feeling, like whenever he, like, basically straddles the mayor's dead body and starts pulling out the duct tape. Mm-hmm. First off, I'm not gonna lie. When I first watched this movie and it shows him straddling it and he's reaching down, like, is this man about to unzip his pants right now?
I thought, like, I had the same thought when I first watched it. I was like, hey, yo, what movie is this? Hey, yo, chill.
All I could think of, like, I remember I was sitting in theaters, I was just like, this movie was rated PG-13, right?
Like, hey, yo.
I'm not about to see this man desecrate a corpse, right?
He doesn't.
But no, we don't. It doesn't.
As far as we know.
But I feel like the filmmakers are definitely trying to evoke that and imply that, which is, that's so much the truth in our real lives, is like there's just people out there who are kind of creepy, and then they are capable of doing this stuff like that. Like, it's very unsettling. And I think and I agree with Randy, it's realistic in a sense where, like, there's no joke, he could be creepy and intimidating because he is capable of these awful things, but also when you get him in a cell, you realize it's because it's come from a guy who's pathetic. It's someone who's basically lacked any sort of real agency in his life, and he feels like this is the way he has to take it, is through these awful acts. So I agree with that. I really like that take. It's just a shame that, like, we like I said, we just live in a time of dead media literacy where people look at these kinds of characters. It's like, God, I want to be just like him.
It's like, no,
like, Jesus, please.
The movie's telling you don't want to be like him.
He's the villain. I do love that moment. I love the moment, and it goes back to, like, I referenced this before, but I love the fact that, like, it goes back, and again, to that monologue of, like, Batman's in this city, and he is, for the first year that he's there, he's making it worse. He is causing problems. He is, and it culminates in Riddler of, like, the idea of, like, I idolized you. I'm doing what you want us to do. And he's like, no, no, I am not like you.
What's the line from The Incredibles where just like he's not affiliated with me? Oh, that is the line from The Incredibles.
I think you just said it. Yeah.
Incredible. You're not affiliated with me.
You're not affiliated. Yeah,
like, I
it's
feel
that.
Like that's basically the plot of the Batman.
But also, I love that scene so much because like the first time you watch that movie, of like you're watching it and you're like, oh my god, he knows he's Bruce Wayne. Oh my, what's he gonna do? And like everyone's so convinced he's Bruce Wayne, and then he's talking about it's like, dang, Bruce Wayne. Can't believe he got away, right? I mean, fuck that guy, am I right? And you see like the Batman's eyes wide of like, oh thank Christ.
Well,
oh my god.
But it's also the realization, it's like, oh, this guy's actually a bit more of a bigger idiot.
Yeah,
he's not a complete mastermind.
It's the moment he realizes, oh, this isn't Heath Ledger's Joker. And like honestly, that's kind of scarier. It's an idiot with power. It's almost scarier than like the cold, calculated killer.
Well, what's scary is like, God, and I hate how plausible so much of this feels, where it's basically like it's an idiot with a small but dedicated following.
Yeah.
Because if you remember when they get into the social media account, it's like how many followers? Maybe like 200 or something.
I think it's like 500.
Oh, he had like 50.
It was 50. It was only 50.
It was like really
it's only
small.
50, but it's 50 dedicated people.
50 dedicated people who are like, what's funny is they're not high tech and they're sharing tips on like this is how you get army surplus. This is how you can get these rifles
what kind
and
of caliber
guns and shit. And it's like,
I also love that in the final scene, one dude clearly wasn't paying attention to the forum because he showed up with a shotgun, and I'm like, that is not even close to the caliber they told you to get, brother. That's not even like, what are you doing?
That's a good, which feels right.
I mean, that's appropriate. Yeah, there's one guy that just like wasn't paying attention. He's like, oh,
just
fuck. Wait, we're getting hunting rifles? Shit, man. I thought it was like duck hunting. I was like, no, fuck it. God damn it, Phil.
Yeah,
whatever.
It's just like if you told me that the villains of the Batman would be a bunch of Discord moderators, I don't think I would have been quite ready for that. But that's basically what we get. But in a way, that feels right. People get that. We see that so much. People get radicalized on online spaces. That's where they go to. That's where they get like the most extremist voices get amplified, and then they do awful things.
Yeah, it's great.
So.
It's fun, and I also think it fits this world super well because, like, again, if you put all those guys in a box, even if you put all 50 of them together, Batman beats the shit out of him, like, half awake. Like, he's fine. But I think what's great about both this and both movies is Batman's opponent is not physically stronger than him, but it's like they're intelligent, and it's in the Batman, he's trying to solve a crime, and he's getting challenged intellectually. And in the Batman, he's getting challenged ideologically by the Joker, and like, what should I or shouldn't I do? And I think that's way more interesting than like Bane, who can just break him in half.
And it does like help with like the themes of the film also, where it's kind of like, I think one of the core things the movie is trying to get at is what makes Batman different from the Riddler. It's almost like you can outright hear them say, the Riddler say, what makes you different from me? And it's like,
I'm not wearing
obviously Batman. Yeah, but like Batman in the Batman is his attitude. It's like obviously his motivations and his methods are obviously very different, and he recognizes that. But when you see everything of how the rest of the world sees him, it's like, oh, we aren't all that different, actually, are we? I use scare tactics. I use intimidation. I use frequent amounts of violence to get the way things I want. And it clearly shows that like this is not improving the situation. It actively makes it worse. So I think it's perfect, especially since they also had it where, and I don't know if this was the way it was in the comics with Edward Nygma, but like since they both have like similar backgrounds and they kind of highlight the wealth disparity of how they're able to get to these different places. It's like Batman, lost his parents, but he also inherited a shit ton of wealth as well. And he still ended up as a fucked up kid a little bit, but the Riddler had none of that. He had no support systems. He was at the mercy of Gotham. And he is a product of its system. So I really like that. Like in a lot of ways, like without it being something as so blatant as fucking like Venom versus Spider-Man or some shit, they are both two sides largely of the same coin, which I do like that.
Yeah. And what was I gonna say? So yeah, I also, just to answer your question on like how much of this from the comics, honestly, a lot of this, I get more like Hush vibes from this Riddler than classic Riddler.
Same.
Yeah, he feels more like Hush than Riddler. Which
if I remember correctly, before they announced it was Riddler, I think some people were estimating that it was going to be Hush in this film.
Yeah.
Was it also the name of the reporter that like kind of got offed in like the backstory or whatever?
It was
like Thomas Elliot.
Yeah, which is
yeah.
Which is the I think or maybe not Thomas Elliot, because I think Thomas Elliot is the son, because like if I remember correctly, how Hush is he was the son of the doctor, right? Who was friends with the Waynes. Because it's funny. We glaze up Hush, but we actually don't remember his like actual real name.
He has the vibes of Hush.
But yeah, but he definitely has the vibes of Hush. I think there's definitely references, because I definitely think even part of like, I swear to God, during like the fucking slideshow about like the Wayne's background that the Riddler has ready to go. Which, hey, it definitely gives that conspiracy YouTube side of feel thing. So they definitely got that authentic feeling to it.
Yeah.
Where it's like the grainy look, the zoom ins, and like the shadowed faces and like red markers circling bullshit. They got that. I swear to God, there's one flash of the screen where it's like a newspaper article, but in big letters it just says like Hush or some shit. Or I might have gaslit myself into thinking that. I don't know.
Maybe, I don't know. But he's.
I'm pretty sure that's the thing.
Yeah, he's very.
No, yeah, that totally is, because it's talking about the Hush money.
Oh, okay, yeah,
that's
yeah,
right.
Yeah, that's a fair.
So
yeah,
no, I think the Riddler in this great. I think it fits this world so well. It's unfortunate though, because he's great and he's one of the best Batman villains that we have. Unfortunately, the person that we have to compare him to is the best Batman villain we've had.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
he's a phenomenal. He works so well in this film. It's great. And again, it's very similar with Heath Ledger did, of like change your perspective of the character. That's not how Riddler normally is. Riddler's goofy. The only kind of, and he was kind of changed up a little in like the Gotham TV series, where like Nigma also was like this crazy, more darker character. This took it to a whole new level, and that's great and all. But the other ones, Heath Ledger's Heath Ledger's Joker. So I give the point to Heath Ledger's Joker. I would love to be proven wrong, but I feel like
the
Dark Knight.
And even accounting with it, it's not just Riddler here with Edward Nygma. I like to think of the villain as like the Riddler, so it's him and like all his cult of personality around him. But I agree. I also think this one's a little bit more like split on it. How you guys feel? How do you guys feel about his puns and stuff being like very on the nose? I mean, which granted, I guess that's the point of a pun. But like, for example, it's like, like thumb drive, and it's actual drive on a thumb.
Thumb drive. No, I mean,
thumb drive. The whole Larata thing. The whole Larata thing is the Larata thing is not even that inspired. It's just like, oh, it's supposed to be it's URL. You're supposed to look up a website. It's like, really? That's it? It's like the literal just URL .rata.
Yeah,
it's just like
it's one of those things when you put it in your perspective, I'm like, I feel like the greatest detective would figure it out sooner. But you as the audience, don't get it until after the fact. So
yeah. But and also here's the thing: the puns are obviously really bad, but like maybe that's the point, because we just got through talking about how pathetic this Riddler actually is. It's just like,
oh, you think
his actual riddles are kind of shit.
I like that. I like that idea. That was him hinting at the character that the character is shit.
I'll buy it.
Sure,
I'll buy that.
That's canon now. Yeah.
I feel like I'm kind of getting the vibe of where we all stand on this, but I just want to open the floor to, does anyone have anything else to say? Hopefully positive, to give Riddler a little bit more of an edge here about the Riddler here.
Who's your vote going towards?
I'll take the Joker.
Randy?
As much as I like the Riddler, I think I kind of started this with saying like how interesting and stuff the Riddler was. I think it's still the Joker, but I think it's close. I really enjoyed this Riddler.
I do. I think it's unique.
I'll give the Batman props because you don't see the Riddler being like the main villain of a movie.
Yeah.
Like usually it would be like, someone big like the Joker or Bane or something.
He's played by fucking Jim Carrey the last time we saw him in live action.
Yeah.
So I think that the Batman, it's an interesting villain choice. By the end of it, I don't think he's as effective as a villain, but at least they tried to do someone that wasn't the Joker.
Yeah. And I still stand by this. I know they did the little credit scene, or well, not really credit scene, but like towards the end scene where it's like sort of showing Joker. I really don't want them to do Joker. I'll be honest.
So I don't want another Joker. I want
one up.
Yeah, I would rather them do like a Hush, like find like a lesser known villain, or hell, it would be kind of cool to see what maybe not the next movie, but like later on down the line, like how would they handle a Red Hood type character in the Batman, like. Something like that.
It'd still have to get set up pretty far in advance, and also
that's true.
You can't do Red Hood without Joker. So
yeah, I don't want him to Gotham Knights.
I think you could.
I don't want him to just like, oh, by the way, I had this guy that died. I'm like, well, it would have been cool to see it.
Yeah, well, I think, and I feel like there also it would have to be like, what I mean by like having Red Hood is it would basically have to be almost a different character, but like the idea of like challenging. Well, I don't know. Like, yeah, we didn't see Pattinson kill anyone outright, but he also didn't outright say that like I'm not taking any lives. He didn't. It just like
I feel like Red Hood works more for Dark Knight than the Batman.
Because Batman seems like, I'm not like.
If they die, they die. Like
broken up.
Yeah.
Like, there's a couple of those dudes a couple of those Riddler dudes that he definitely threw into the water unconscious. They probably drowned there or broke their necks or something like that.
You can't tell me that those guys in the opening scene that he just like with like the white face paint, like one of those guys isn't walking again in his life. The first guy he just like pummels in the ground. If that guy's not dead, he's paralyzed.
Plus also like he was ready to kill the last dude when he took that fucking like adrenaline. He started crashing out like so yeah, I don't know. I even their take of Bane I would be interested in the Batman. I really don't want to see another Joker.
If we're talking about,
or rather, I don't want to see another dark Joker. I would much rather see
future villains for like things I was gonna say for labor, but I have two, and one of them I know we've seen before. I would love how does Scarecrow work in this world? I think Scarecrow's perfect.
That would be cool.
I think Scarecrow's awesome.
I think
the other one,
Scarecrow gets sidelined as the main villain like so much. Like it even it happened in Batman Arkham Knight because Arkham Knight kind of took over, and because like. It's funny because all the trailers kind of, yes, there was the Arkham Knight, but also a lot of trailers showed a lot of Scarecrow, and then Scarecrow kind of got sidelined in that game. Batman Begins, which also had Scarecrow in it, played by oh my god, Oppenheimer, Cillian Murphy. That
honestly, bring Cillian
even
Murphy
that movie,
back. Make him do it again.
he got sidelined by Ra's al Ghul towards the end of the movie also. So it's like it would be cool to see a take of Scarecrow that doesn't get sidelined. That just stays the main villain. I would appreciate that.
It's him, and then also just because and there were also rumors about this. Just because I think it's weird, and I don't know how this would work in this world, but I think it'd be super cool just to see him take on something really difficult. Clayface. We have yet to see a Clayface in live action because he's very difficult to do. And there were rumors of him in the Penguin show because a character has a similar name. I would love to see it. I want to see this person just his whole world gets rocked because he's what? These superpowers? What the fuck is this? And I think
that would be kind of cool.
Yeah, I think Clayface, like Riddler, needs to be broken down and has because in most versions of Clayface, he's just a big monster. He's a big monster, and with the exception of the animated series, which gave him a really cool backstory of him being an actor and he doesn't know who he is anymore, and he keeps messing around with his different personalities and his different personas. I think there's a lot of potential with Clayface that hasn't been done yet.
Yeah, I vibe with that.
Okay. But going on from that,
you know what they would probably do, because much like the Dark Knight trilogy, and I'm going to say this, and you're going to basically be like, well, that's Hush, is what I feel like they would do with Clayface is, because like the Dark Knight trilogy, they seem to be kind of averse to the idea of superpowers in these worlds. Their version of Clayface, I imagine it'd be like a serial killer who also does surgery on his face to change the way it looks, a lot of plastic surgery. And I don't want that. I want superpowers. I want superpowers. But you get what I mean. Tonally, I feel like that's what they would do with the Batman movie series if they did introduce Clayface. I don't want that.
Man, just go balls to the wall. Just give them weird powers, man. Make this shit weird. I love it.
It would be so cool. It would be kind of cool to just introduce, because I can imagine just how much that would just break a person's mind, where it's it's been mostly normal crime stuff, and just and these motherfuckers now have superpowers.
Yeah, and
what
a goop monster shows up, and he's like, "What the fuck? What?
It'd be crazy. It'd be even crazier if they were "Fuck it, Solomon Grundy. You're literally getting Frankenstein in this bitch."
Insane.
That'd be crazy. All right. While we're on this topic, just to not Randy, Robert. We'll start with Randy though. What Batman's villain would you want to see in the Batman world?
Mr. Freeze.
That's a good answer.
That'd be interesting.
Yeah.
I think
there's a way to do him without Freeze powers. That'd be cool.
Well, I think it's less of Freeze powers, and it's just flat out experiments.
Yeah.
Experiment goes wrong, and oh no, here we are.
I know it's been kind of tainted with Gotham Knights, but honestly, Court of Owls, conspiracy.
Court of Owls fits this world. Court of Owls fits this world so well. Yeah.
Yeah, obviously not. I know was issues with the Gotham Knights game, and I really don't want to get into it. But outside of that, though, I think the idea of an upper echelon of Gotham's elite, kind of keeping the people down. And you have the Court of Owls with their fingers everywhere, and you have this more investigative Batman uncovering that conspiracy. That sounds awesome to me.
That fits this world. Robert?
I want to see Ra's al Ghul.
Yeah.
That's where Batman learns how to fight, is through the League of Assassins. So I would be interested to see their take on that villain in the Batman universe.
I can see it. Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's and I wouldn't say he was absolutely perfect in every way. The only thing that would hold me back is just I don't know. I was kind of happy with the race that we got in the Dark Knight trilogy. I don't know if I want him back. I'm also a weird person where I'm but I get what you're saying. Yeah, I'm not the most in love with. Yeah, I'm not the love.
Deathstroke is
actually
good. Yeah,
Deathstroke.
I like Deathstroke.
Deathstroke would be kind of rad, actually. Okay,
we're going on the assassin line.
I like the idea that I like the idea of Batman finally getting control of the city, and then just this unit of an assassin comes and just fucks him up.
Fuck me. And
like,
also, maybe not as a main villain, but a side villain like Black Mask would be fucking rad too.
Yeah, Black Mask
like
is
as a
another
side
one
thing.
Black Mask is another one that like that fits in this world. Black Mask fits well.
Is it Deathstroke or Deadshot? I think I'm getting the two confused.
I hope you're talking about Deathstroke. I am so Deadshotted out. I do not want to see Deathshot anymore.
I think Deathstroke's the one I'm thinking of.
Deathstroke is like the older assassin. Deadshot is just the guy who shoots good and is played by Will Smith.
Yeah.
All right. So, moving on from that, a lot of these other points we've kind of talked about before. So before we get to that, we'll actually go straight to Gotham City itself. And like I said, this is one where we talked about before. But there's not too much on this one. It's one Chicago, as Seth pointed out to me before this podcast. It's just downtown Chicago. And the other actually feels like a different city. Like this is like a city.
It feels like New York.
I think it's more than that, though.
Wait,
it gives it.
Which one?
The Batman one kind of feels like New York to me.
I definitely think it is kind of going for that vibe, but like when I mean like it feels like its own identity, I think I mean like the color, the fact that like it's always fucking raining. Gotham Square doesn't feel. Gotham Square to me didn't feel like Times Square because it's like you see all the garbage like piled heaps high. I know Times Square also has its fair share, but they do a better job of like hiding it. But like Gotham Square is like literally heaps high with like garbage and like Batman's walking through that crowd during Halloween at night. Just the general architecture feels like an older Gothic city. Gotham just feels like something like an actual comic book place ripped straight from the pages and put onto the big screen versus, like I said, with like Gotham in The Dark Knight is just a city. It's just Chicago.
Yeah, I think what like stands out the most to me is like in the Batman, it's like Bruce is living in a castle almost with like how it's constructed. You just get the idea. He's living in like this old ancient place, even though I'm pretty sure it's just, Wayne Tower.
Yeah. And even Wayne Tower itself, because like Wayne Tower is where Alfred gets blown up by the Riddler's package. Like that looks so stylized and so gothic and different.
Even every building is very like architectural. Like even the police station is this huge tower, and it's like that, so he has a thing to jump off of. But like, it has that spiraling staircase out the front. I was like, why does the police station need this? Because it's cool looking.
And I'm going to say this, and it's not because I'm an art major, just because I played BioShock. But it had like an Art Deco thing with like the statues at the top, and they're like the heads pointed upwards with like the wings at their back and stuff like that. And then Batman's about to jump. Like there's so much character to Gotham, and I really like that about like the Batman.
I also think the Batman has a better like you get a sense of like here's the upper class like people, and then here's like the seedy underbelly. Like you spend times in the sewers and the grime and in Penguin's Club, and like all that in the Batman.
But yeah, like the difference between like you hit up the mayor's pad versus the Iceberg Lounge and all that, and like. I like how the Iceberg Lounge is basically like it is like one of those like little like you go to, like one of those little rave warehouses where you go in and there's like lights and there's music that goes and there's people like definitely doing a lot of drugs. It's great.
Randy, what are your thoughts on either Gothams? Do you have similar thoughts, or do you like one more than the other? Or did either stand out to you?
I don't think I had too much of a favorite. I think the Batman one stands out to me a little more. I think a little bit from the Art Deco styling we see in the Manor, but also in like Wayne Tower. But also, I think just generally, I enjoyed like the shots and stuff, like cinematography wise, of the Batman.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it helped give the city like a more distinct vibe in comparison to the other one feeling like, well, Chicago.
Yeah.
Which, so yeah.
I don't think there's too much comparison here, to be honest.
I will say there's one more wrinkle I'm going to throw into this, and you kind of already introduced it yourself, Drew.
Mm-hmm.
It is not just about the architecture and the city and the feel of it. It is also about the people living in it, the people of Gotham, and if Gotham becomes its own character. Because I feel like where the Dark Knight struggled to make Gotham feel more like a place beyond just a city, I do think one thing they nailed, and largely it does come down to one scene, but they do, or actually a couple of different scenes, is how much they integrate Gotham and its people into the story as part of Joker's plans.
Oh yeah.
I think first off, whenever Joker is like, you know what, I don't want the Batman's identity to be known. Either you kill this guy in the next hour, or I blow up a hospital. And the fact that like there's so much tension around that, like anybody is capable of anything. I love the scene where they're like, I love the tension of the scene where Batman is talking with like Gordon. And he's like, okay, these are the police officers that we know that have like people in the hospital. And he's looking at the one guy in front of him with the shotgun. And he's like, he gives him a name. And I forget what Gordon says something. He says like, you're Jimmy, right? It's like, yeah. It's just like, I'm going to need you to give me that gun. It's like, well, and as he starts lowering the shotgun, it's like, why do you want my gun? I love the tension of that, but it gets even better whenever we get to the ferry dilemma, where you have the ferry of prisoners and the ferry of citizens, and the back and forth. And I do think a lot of the dialogue is actually like kind of realistic, where I do think people on the citizen ferry would just basically be like, they had their chance.
Yeah, blah,
there would
blah,
definitely be
criminals. Yeah.
Oh, 1,000%.
But I love to me, I think it's one of the most emotional parts of The Dark Knight. I personally love that scene so much. I love the fact that the guy who was saying that like they're criminals is like, fine, I'll do it myself. I'll get my hands dirty. And even he can't bring himself to basically do it. He's like, fuck. But even better, I love the prisoner.
He threw that out the window. I was like, fuck yeah.
Yeah, I love that line. He's just like, give it to me, and I'll do what you should have done with it 10 minutes ago. And it just fucking tosses it out the window. He's like, I love how he's just like, you could tell them I wrestled it from you.
Yeah,
and it's just like, God. And then the fact that he just like throws out the window, sits down, and then just everyone just has to sit with their knowledge of their impending death is so good. I love it because it's a scene where you don't really have any of the mainstay characters. None of the supporting cast are in these scenes, but you get so much out of them. And it's like, that's such good filmmaking. Is like, it's almost like a little side story at this point.
Yeah. Like,
oh, what are the people of Gotham up to? It's like, this is some crazy shit. A lesser filmmaker, it feels aggravating. It'd be like watching, I can't think of a good movie equivalent. I don't know, Independence Day. And it's just like, let's check on the family. What are they doing? It's like, no, motherfucker, I want to see what they're doing about fighting the aliens.
Yeah,
I don't give a shit about the family.
It's like in the
Godzilla
movies where we keep coming back to like the human characters. Where it's like,
yeah. It's just like, I don't really care about this right now, even though as a big Godzilla dweeb, I actually do, even in the worst movies. But that's not the point. I want to support the argument here. I agree. I feel like a lesser filmmaker would make this part so boring.
Yeah.
But they do such a good job with it.
And so,
but in the Batman, its equivalent scene, all the big major players you see during the mayor's funeral, I really like how you have like it's a combination of like the leaders and even oh my god, I feel so bad. It's like Bell something, the not the incumbent mayor, the one that's running against them.
I don't remember his name.
Her. Well, it's a her.
Oh, sorry.
It's like Bell or something like that.
Anyway,
it's not, but it's whatever.
I think that's what it is.
Anyway.
What was it?
We know what we're talking about.
Yeah, we know who you're talking about. Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, like I really like how she does like she confronts like Bruce. It's just like, hey, there's a lot that you could do for the city. You never come into the city at all, hardly. No one ever sees you. But your family has a legacy of flame. philanthropy, and it's like all this stuff. It's like, yes, I really love those elements, and I think that's what really helps elevate Gotham as well. Is just having those moments as well. So it's hard to pin down. It's like art direction and atmosphere and feel is definitely a part of it. But I also feel like it's the people of Gotham too that makes it happen.
Yeah. No, I can definitely see that. But as we start kind of closing up, so we've talked about Batman himself. We've talked about the villains. We talked about Gotham. We touched on the side characters as well. And we even talked about the story. So I have kind of my list down of like which film wins in each category. So as we go into our final thoughts, I'll show you guys what I'm talking about. But like I'll talk about like I think the Batman does better in this, and the Dark Knight does better in this, and that will kind of be how my closing thoughts are done. It'll make more sense, but essentially, how I see like this comparison is the Batman. I think the 2002's The Batman has a better Batman. I like Pattinson's
2002.
I did again. It's because I wrote it down and I'm reading it. I'm gonna fix it right now. 2022 has a better.
And what sucks especially is there was an animated series on Cartoon Network, I think, called The Batman that did come out around 2002. So that makes it even better.
By the way, that series slaps. That's not what we're talking about here. But I think 2022's The Batman. I like his character more. I want to see him more in different situations. I'm super intrigued by Pattinson's portrayal of the character, and I love that. And I also think Gotham City itself is way more interesting in The Batman. You know, I love seeing the underbelly of it. Sith, I like what you were talking about, you know, like the people in it are super good, but I honestly give that point more to like I think the writing of the story. That's where I take that, and I think that is more like story, and that's where that category, or that's where Dark Knight gets points in for story. But like in terms of atmosphere of just like how the world looks and how the world's interacting, I give it to Gotham. That said, every other category goes to Dark Knight. Like the villains, Joker's like not just Joker, because Harvey Dent as Two-Face is great in Dark Knight. The story, Batman's character arc is so amazing in Dark Knight. And then, like Seth, what you were saying earlier of even the side stories, that the fairy house, the fairy dilemma is super interesting in Dark Knight. Harvey Dent's story, even like Gordon's story of like trying to be a good man, but ultimately realize like, no, I need to ostracize my friend for the betterment of the city is a really powerful moment. Is great. I love the side characters. Gordon's great. Kind of wish Rachel did more, but hey, like you said, she doesn't.
Yeah.
And so like, and Dark Knight is just one of those things where it's like, yes, the Batman has a better The Batman and a Gotham, but Dark Knight, just the tone of the world, the villains, everything around Batman. It's just better. So it's an incredibly close race. And honestly, before starting this podcast, I didn't think it was going to be a close race for me, but I still give it to Dark Knight, but like barely, you know, like when I do this in like these 5 categories of Batman himself, villain, story, Gotham, it's a 3-2 split. It's very neck and neck, and I could definitely see people saying that the Batman is better, but for me it's still Dark Knight by just a little bit. We'll go kind of round robin here of Robert, what are your thoughts? This is your big closing moment for the Dark Knight versus the Batman, which came out in 2022.
Yeah, so ultimately, like I said earlier, I ended up liking the Dark Knight more still than the Batman. I say still. I watched Batman for the first time like 2 days ago, but I really liked it still, and I think overall as a movie I enjoyed it more. I just think the side stories I thought were more compelling, because the fairy scene is probably one of the most interesting ones, ironically, because it really shows like, you know, humanity in the face of despair, because these people are pretty much putting a whole other set of people's like lives in their hands, and it's like, all right, either the civilians and or citizens, I guess, and the criminals, like, and they both show humanity to one another, because like, the guy who takes the remote and throws it in the ocean, he's like saying, yeah, these people should live, and then the guy's saying, all right, I'll blow up the boat, I'll do it, grabs it, and then he really thinks his decision through, like, and he can't do it, he can't kill these people. So it just really shows like humanity on both sides. Like, the Joker wanted to show, yes, these people want to, like, they're going to kill each other
they're
because
just like me. They're
every man for himself.
Yeah.
But
These civilized people, they'll eat each other. Yep.
Yeah, and ultimately they're still human. They still have empathy even when it's literally life or death. So I think stuff like that really puts the Dark Knight ahead for me. Because the characterization of like Batman, I think the Batman does a really good job with. I really like, the kind of back and forth between like Batman and the Riddler, and it all kind of crashing down on the Riddler at the end, because yes, these people are just heavily radicalized because they just, something that the Batman did, caused them to be the way they are. And it's ultimately Bruce's responsibility at the end of the day. And now, how's he gonna address this? But yeah, ultimately I think the Dark Knight, I just found a lot more of like an enjoyable film for me. But again, none of these films are bad.
No.
Like, we're like kind of comparing and contrasting. But like, again, both of these are really well made, even though they're doing like different things. Like, ironically, The Dark Knight, with it having dark in the title, was a lighter story than the Batman, because this all comes back to like the color palettes of the movies, if you will. There's a lot of black and red for like the Batman, but the Dark Knight there's a lot more daytime stuff in that. It's not as like moody of a city. It's Chicago in the daylight or whatever.
Yeah.
But it's more about the characters than the world for that one. And, what the Joker's doing to like basically try to cause chaos. And yeah, that's pretty much my closing thoughts on those two.
I gotcha. All right. So Robert's voice is also Dark Knight. Randy, it's your turn.
It's difficult, but
it is a hard. It's a hard question.
I think I'm gonna go with.
Yeah.
I think I'm gonna go with the Batman.
Okay.
I really enjoyed the different direction that it took, in comparison to the Dark Knight, and like, even though the Dark Knight is fantastic, it is, like everyone has said already, it's a very close race. I think of the two movies, at least for me right now, that I want to go back and rewatch, I'd rather go rewatch the Batman. Just via like, if I want to see a film with Batman, not being necessarily as investigative, but more like, I guess, action oriented, I have several to choose from. But in regards to more of like detective comics, DC, a Batman, I have the Batman, and that's at least from my point of view, that's kind of about it.
I forgot
So
that's what DC stood for.
I would rather go back and watch that personally.
All right.
Not that the other one's bad. It's still very, very good.
Yes. No. Yeah. Exactly. No. Vote for the Batman. Seth, it's your turn.
I think really where I could kind of sum up a lot of my thoughts is everything that we've all kind of said with the categories in terms of like villain, story, writing. I pretty much line the same way as Drew does and everybody else does. As for the films itself, I said it before and I'll say it again one more time at the end. I think the Dark Knight is a better film. I think this is something. I think that is a film that we will use to teach film classes for years of like how to do shot composition, how to do dialogue, how to do plot. I feel like that film will be the gold standard. but I think the Batman is just a better Batman story. I think it gets to the core of who Batman is as a character from the comics better. I think it gets in line with like the world of Gotham better. I think it gets more in line with like its sense of style better. I do like the more investigative, darker feeling of it. One thing that we didn't get to mention too much, I feel like the big critical sin for me about the Batman is pacing. This is a close to 3 hour fucking movie versus The Dark Knight.
Yeah.
Whenever I went,
I was here for it.
Yeah,
it's locked in.
Hold on, I got some. Whenever I watched the Batman in theaters, I did feel that. I was with a bunch of my friends, and we watched it. And by the end of it, I was kind of like, I just sort of wanted to end already. God dang it. But on this recent rewatch, how I actually approached it is I did it a little differently. I instead of watching the Batman all the way through, I broke it up into like chunks. So I would watch it in 30 to 45-minute increments, almost like a TV show. And for me, that made the experience so much better. I spent a lot more time chewing on what happened. Even though I knew what was going to happen, I had more time to think about the film itself, what this showed, why did I think it was significant, and treating the Batman almost like a TV miniseries really elevated that experience for me in a weird way. Not going to say it's going to work for everybody. I think it's just something for me that really helped with the pacing issue of this being almost a close to 3 hour fucking movie. In general, I just need movies to be shorter for my sake.
I never felt.
I really want to go see Wick.
I didn't feel the length.
I really want to go.
It blurred for me, but that's me.
Like I said, this is a personal thing, but like one of the things that makes it intimidating is like, man, I want to go see Wicked. How long is that movie? So yeah, I think my stance though is I'm fully acknowledging everything that I said. Mm-hmm. I'm gonna have to go with the Batman as my movie because because I feel like my key issue with that film is the pacing. I feel like there's things that could be a little tighter, a little quicker. And I agree that the villain in The Dark Knight is better. But I agree with Randy. I think there's just something about the world of the Batman is so much more captivating that I want to go back into. And I still acknowledge that like The Dark Knight is just a better made film. Like I would be like, no. I would say like you need to learn from The Dark Knight, not the Batman, if you had to study one film. But I think I prefer the Batman. I think I prefer the tone of it now. I think I prefer just everything about it. It's just so much more of a captivating world to me than The Dark Knight is.
Interesting. All right. Well, you know what something I love about this is that we are completely split. 2 for Dark Knight, 2 for the Batman. So you only want to solve this issue if you guys in the comments tell us which one you like better. Shameless plug. I'll always go back to the people. But no.
We'll tell you why you're wrong.
Yes.
Or right.
Yes, and tell us why we're wrong and why we don't know what we're talking about. Because you guys love that. But that said, I mean, we've talked about these movies for a long time, and I think that's about everything. So we'll finish this podcast off with how we finish off all other podcasts, giving us our fresh picks of the week. This is what we've been playing, watching, or listening to in between recording this podcast. Who did I don't remember who I started with, so we're just going to go back to Robert. Robert, what have you been playing, watching, or listening to outside of the Batman?
Well, I just finished Metaphor Reef Fantasio after playing it for like 2 months, and that was a damn good video game. Expect me to talk about it again sometime soon, but the gist of it is that, one, I really love the gameplay systems, because they mix a lot of Atlas's like RPG elements together with like their mainline Shin Megami Tensei combat and Persona combat. And I really like the story and the cast. They're all a bunch of goofballs, but they know when to be serious. And then I really like what they're going for of like the story, because like a big element in it is, you know, the notion of fantasy. and the very first thing the game asks you is that, do you believe like fantasy can affect reality? And you have the whole game to ponder that question, and it all comes full circle in the end. And I really enjoyed what they do with it narratively. It's a game that you don't really have to have any further like prior Atlas experience to like pick up and enjoy. It's just a really good game, and I think it's worth experiencing. And there's a free demo on any platform besides Nintendo if you are interested.
Yeah. And I'm pretty sure, correct me if I'm wrong, I'm pretty sure your demo progress does translate to the main game as well.
It does, yeah.
Baller.
No, that's sick. Yeah, definitely have to check that out. All right, Randy, what's your fresh pick?
So my fresh pick is actually I know it came out in theaters a while back. Was Alien Romulus.
Yeah.
I actually just watched that this past Wednesday. Super fun. I know the Alien movies had a bit of a hiccup there in the kind of recently in regards to film, but it's super fun to watch.
Like a 20-year hiccup, yeah. You know, as one does.
Yeah. If you enjoyed the first two, I think you'll enjoy this one. Or even if you're just more of a casual fan of the first two, I think you're still really going to enjoy this one. I will say I think it had like one too many jump scares for me. But other than that, like in regarding to reliance on jump scares, but other than that, I thought it was really, really fun to watch. So if you're just, I mean, I'd say Halloween, but we already passed that.
Yeah.
But I don't know, if you're just wanting to watch a fun sci-fi scary movie, give it a shot. It's fun.
Love it. All right, Mr. Seth, what fresh picks you got for us?
Yeah, so I've been playing, and I imagine a lot of people have already heard about it, but Indiana Jones and the Great Circle.
Yeah.
I've been playing that game. I super enjoying it. The more I play it, the more I really dig it. I've got to say, there's not much more I can add to it because I feel like it's a hard game to sell people on if I just show them it. Weirdly, I feel like it's like the only way you're really gonna get it is if you play it. Like I honest to God believe it. But whenever you play it, it just feels so fun. I think the combat is a good mix of like fun and goofy. I think the puzzles are really well done. I think there's a lot of really good environmental stuff, exploration, and of course the story is really is actually pretty damn good. Feels very authentic to Indiana Jones, like those older films. And I think that's why I like it. It's I think what impresses me the most is there's very much an easier world where this film, or sorry, I mean it basically does feel like a film. But like this game could have been just a Tomb Raider or a Naughty Dog style Uncharted type game, like just basic linear third person cutscene heavy type deal. And I was shocked when I realized it's not really that, but it's still a very well done story and world building and character and all this shit. So yeah, I feel like Indiana Jones: The Great Circle is definitely going to be worth a lot of people's time. It's a bit more of a chunkier game than I was expecting, but I'm okay with that. And I'm just glad to see that there is a way to do narrative-driven games without kind of falling into the same pitfalls that we always, or not pitfalls, but always the same tropes that we've been seeing a lot lately with these types of games. Even though it's about a film series that is well over 40 years old now, it is a fresh take on the adventure narrative game genre, and I really appreciate that.
He said the name of the podcast, people.
So what I'm kind of getting from this is like it's still like a relatively linear game, but it's not like as on rails as like an Uncharted or Last of Us kind of deal.
It's actually it's not even that linear. It's actually shockingly open. I don't know if I want to say outright open world, but like one of the first areas I'm in is the Vatican, and there's a lot to explore. And even the side quests are felt really good because it feels like, oh, there's actually like really interesting characters and plot details you uncover through doing the side quests. The big cutscene that you see in the trailers where Indiana Jones, it's like he's reading off something, he's like, the Great Circle, and he like looks up in the sky. That's not even from the main story. That's a side quest. which is like
Really?
wild to me. Yeah, it's all well done. The side quests and their cutscenes and stuff like blur the line of like what is the main story. And like what I like about it is how you can approach a lot of things in different orders, so you get bits of the story out of order sometimes. It's cool. It's really cool. I'm shocked at like how much player-driven agency. If there's something I would compare it to, it's more like an immersive sim than a FPS, like it might look like if you look at it on the surface, which is shocking. I'm not expecting that.
Cool. Now I'll definitely check it. That's a game that's like I have it downloaded, and I probably honestly will play it today once we finish recording. But I've been meaning to play that for a while because I'm a huge Indiana Jones fan.
Yeah, I think you'll like it. I think you know what it feels like when I play it is it kind of feels like that December end of the year film, like like kind of what Star Wars sort of felt like for a while when we got one like almost every year, where it's just like, oh, it's almost the end of the year, and there's this really exciting like film adventure series I was really looking forward to, and it's coming out. This is basically the game equivalent of that.
That's cool. I'm so glad to hear that. I'm so glad Indiana Jones has good media coming out. It needed it. It needed it bad. Oh, sorry. All right. Well, with that said and that fresh, my pick is a movie I should have watched a very long time ago, and I didn't. And every single person that knows me and knows what kind of films I like told me to watch it, and it just took me too long to watch. But I finally watched The Substance. It's a horror movie that came out this year. It ran on Amazon. But if you like psychological thrillers, this is really good. It's a very, it's not like it only gets super gory at the very end, but it's very stylized. It's very cool to look at. It has one of the craziest endings ever. And honestly, I'm not going to talk too much about it because one of the best things about The Substance is going into a completely blind and not knowing what it's about or what it is. So that is all I will say is if you like horror movies, go watch The Substance. And that is it, because you should go into this movie blind, and it is amazing. It's also not super long. So yeah, that's my fresh pick. I want to say thank you to all my guests for joining us and talking about Batman. It was a pleasure, and this has been definitely a podcast that all of us, especially Seth, have been wanting to do for a very long time, because the last time we talked about Batman was the Arkham games, I believe, is when we talked about that. But yeah, It's always a fun time talking about that. So, gentlemen, I want to thank you all for joining me and talking about this. And of course, I want to thank the audience for joining us and listening in. You guys are the reason we keep doing this. Thank you for enjoying, and stay safe out there. Goodbye.